All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry. I had a bit of a technical glitch at some point. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened. But hi, everybody. Welcome to the Morbid Symptoms podcast. I'm here with Laura Jones. Happy to have you back. How are you doing,
Oh,
Laura?
brilliant. So good to see you again. I'm so glad you're back.
Well,
Goodness.
I'm looking kind of, I'm looking kind of a Beau Bonnet here, but it's all good. It doesn't matter. People aren't here to bask at my whatever. Uh, anyway, I'm wondering what's. Sorry, everyone. Welcome to Morbid Symptoms. We're about ready to start. We're going to talk about the housing mafia and the housing crisis in Scotland. And a bit about elite scapegoating of immigrants in Islam. You may have heard, I know that Elon Musk, this guy you might have heard about, was tweeting quite a bit about the rape of Britain and all this stuff. And so there was, I'm not sure how big it was, but it seemed like there was a lot of people that were taking to the street with their flags and whatnot. What was it, the English flag, and wanting to take their country back. So we're going to talk a bit about that. And then we're also going to talk about free speech in the UK through looking at the Graham Lineham case, the Glinner case. He's a comedian, the writer. We'll get into that, but he was arrested for some quote unquote anti-trans tweets, and it's kicked off quite the firestorm in the UK over free speech, and particularly how people who seem to have no problem or call for people who are protesting against the genocide in Israel and their government support for it. They are okay with that, with the elderly people, anybody being dragged off for peaceful protests, holding a sign that says Palestine Action and I support Palestine Action. That's no problem. But they're very much up in arms, of course, over the anti-trans tweet. And of course, you see some of the reverse on the other side as well. People who are very upset about the infringement on free speech or their understanding of it, especially with the cracking down of protests against what's going on in Israel, Palestine, and the government's still pretty much full support for it, are very upset about that, but kind of celebrating and taking their pound of flesh, so to speak, with Graham Lineham being arrested for some mean tweets about trans women, which are men. So that's our agenda. And I'm not sure why we're in these little pictures, these little picture bubbles. But while I figure that out, Laura, do you want to introduce yourself a bit? And and I'm going to look just, what's going on with you. And then I'm going to fix our little squares here, hopefully.
My name is Laura Jones. I'm a housing activist and radical feminist. I live in Scotland, in Glasgow. I, like most people, I'm absolutely losing my mind over everything that's going on at the moment, and the increased polarization and tribalism of, you must pick a side, and once you have picked your side, you must agree with everything that goes along with that side, even though that's not how humans work, and that's not how our brains work, and that's not how society works. People have a whole range and shade of different opinions about different things, and there is no clear-cut sides to be chosen. So I feel like I'm constantly torn, like I'm sure a lot of people feel, in that I'm on this side on this issue and that side and the other issue. And I mean, we've talked about this before, and I think it all comes down to, well, a lot of it comes down to a lack of class analysis in the political discourse. We're determined to find scapegoats and to think of everything as just a problem of individuals having the wrong ideas, instead of actually seeing things as a product of the material circumstances in which we're living, and that social issues arise as a result of economic largely situations that we find ourselves in. And so the housing issue, for example, is probably, I think, the big issue of our time, at least here in Britain. So I never really know whether to refer to this as its own country or not. Obviously, we haven't quite gotten our act together to have our own country up here, but sometimes it's very tempting to think of Scotland as it being a separate country. But certainly when it comes to this issue, it's the same. It is absolutely the same. We've got the Scottish flags going up all over my neighborhood, all along the main street. and reform are making inroads in Scotland, maybe not to the same extent as they are in England, but it is a thing. And we've got the hotel protests, and we've got, scary guys with like all the facial tattoos and all the rest of it turning up and talking about burning these places down and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's getting pretty scary. But I don't really feel like there's much pushback in the form of like genuine alternative explanations for what's going on, because we are facing big problems as a society. And one of those is that women and girls are increasingly unsafe in our cities. And that is reality. And it's a reality that the left has always liked to just put its hands over its ears and go, no, no, it's not happening. Because it's difficult. It's a difficult thing to think about. So it's easier just to say it's not a problem at all, which obviously plays into the hands of the right and just hands them all these arguments, So, well, I would like to plug our little organisation. Well, not so little anymore, but the Scottish Tenants Organisation has had some successes over the last year and a bit. So under the last housing minister, we did manage to get the housing budget partially restored, which had massive cuts made to it. We were the only campaigning organisation that was calling for that. We've managed to get AWAB's law applied in Scotland, which is Ashad Awab was a kid that died as a result of terrible conditions in his home, in his social housing. So it was mold and damp that exacerbated his condition. And they made a law in England in his name, whereby social landlords have a responsibility to make sure that they're making the repairs and maintenance to keep buildings up to scratch so that people's health isn't being affected by damp and mold. So we've had high profile cases in Scotland that we've been promoting where, for example, a child was very nearly died as a result of a condition that was exacerbated by mold and damp. And we've actually managed to get that attached to the latest upcoming housing bill. So that's been another big success. And then just this week, we had a meeting with the Scottish government on, was it Thursday, I think? And we demanded, among other things, for 1.5 billion a year to be spent on the affordable housing programme. And the very next day, they announced that that's actually happening, which is very, very unusual. Well, unfortunately, as always, the devil's in the detail, and it turned out that it's not all going to be public money. A lot of it will be private leveraged funding. So we'll see how that money gets spent and what kind of developments get spent on. It's not going to be as simple as, great, you can have all the council housing that you need. And it's also not enough, because we're actually going to need to spend a lot more than that to have the housing that we will need going forward, and the number of council houses, social houses that we will need to build over the next 5 years to meet demand. And a lot of this stuff that we're looking at, I think, has been driven by the housing crisis. And as much as a lot of people, see, I follow some great people on Twitter that are concerned with housing and homelessness. Some of them in the States, some of them in the UK. And while I love that they're out there documenting what's happening to the people that are actually suffering the consequences of it, which is not something that the kind of political elites really bother their asses to do. I love that they're out there doing that, but I do feel like sometimes they're drawing the wrong conclusions, which is that homelessness is a cultural issue, and that people choose to live the life of a homeless person because it's appealing in some way, and that it's the breakdown of morals has caused people to turn to drugs, etc. And that this is a problem that with what is it, neoliberalism has been, or sorry, the NGO kind of culture has created a situation where they're being pandered to, they're being given everything on a plate, and so these people just can't be bothered living in homes anymore or being part of society or working. And I don't see, basically they don't see it as being connected to a lack of housing. And I very, very definitely see homelessness, and it seems obvious to me, but apparently not. Homelessness is indeed linked to a lack of housing.
Yeah.
And, in particular in Glasgow, this is really
It's
obvious.
right in the name. Yeah.
Have demolished tens of thousands of social homes over the last 20 years, starting with the stock transfer, which was when they basically voted to transfer all council housing, which used to be owned and run by the councils, by the local authorities. They transferred it all into the hands of housing associations, so social landlords. And the idea that the way it was sold to everybody at the time was that these would be accountable to the local community. There would be a lot of small, kind of companies that would run these properties, and that there would be tenant involvement and all the rest of it. Really, it was just one giant privatization move. And what has happened is increasingly they're getting swallowed up by and become it's bigger and bigger housing associations. The main one here is the Weekly Group, which owns like half of Scotland at this point. And of course, they're beholden to their shareholders and companies like BlackRock, which is everywhere. Everywhere where there's privatization happening, you can guess that BlackRock will be there somewhere up the chain. So yeah, since that happened 20 years ago, they've been busy demolishing all our social housing and replacing it where they feel like it with mid-market rent or private developments, which are largely unaffordable to people. And this inflates the housing bubble, and it creates this like system where their profits increase, the demand increases, and our entire housing system and all our housing policy now is designed to keep that housing bubble, inflated. And it's under the current system, it is impossible to burst the housing bubble, bring those prices down, and start having affordable homes for people. So the Scottish Tenants Organisation is all about, we need council housing, we need a return to the council housing model, and we need a mass programme of house building. And what we need to achieve that is we need a national house building company. We do not want to leave it up to the likes of the Weekly Group, who suck in hundreds of millions of public money and don't actually build anything and are not accountable to the people that they're supposed to serve. So that's what we're all about. And then obviously there's my pet project, if you will, which is what I'm laser focused on, is this, because we've got this huge homelessness crisis, got a whole lot of homeless women, and we have emergency accommodation across Scotland. We actually have legislation which says that when you apply as homeless to the council, if you go to the council and you say, I don't have anywhere to stay, they have a legal obligation to house you. So to find you emergency accommodation immediately, with an aim to then getting you into permanent accommodation thereafter. That hasn't been happening. It hasn't been happening for years. The councils have been breaking the law on this. But now it's getting beyond, because we have got this massive inflated crisis. You've got thousands of people being told, no, there is no accommodation available. And then the lucky ones, the ones that are lucky enough to get housed, they're getting put in hotel and B&B accommodation, which people think hotel and they imagine hotels that they've stayed in, right? They think, free kind of buffet breakfast and like
free,
and daily cleaning and all the rest of it. No, that's not what's happening in these places. Lucky if you get a room to yourself. If there's a lock on the door, if your sink or your shower are functioning, the food that you get is abysmal, often moldy. We've had complaints about rats. We've had complaints about bed bugs, damp and mold. Like these places are substandard. So they've actually broken the law on, I couldn't tell you how many, but something like 13,000 and above occasions these places have been shown to have broken the unsuitable accommodation order, i.e. they are not suitable or healthy for people to live in. They're also rife with drug dealing. There's been an epidemic of deaths in these places, mostly young people, a lot of suicides and a lot of drug deaths. And the dealers just hang around out the front door. There's very little policing seems to go on. And as you can imagine, for the women in these places, because it didn't used to be the case that women would be stuck in B&B and hotel accommodation. And if that happened, it would be, an extreme last minute resort kind of thing that was done, for a couple of days while they sort something else out. Now we're looking at women stuck on their own in these mixed sex facilities for an average of 53 weeks. So
I'm trying to do the math now.
Spent in these places. Currently, there's 366 women in Glasgow stuck in these mixed sex facilities, and that includes 85 families with children. So we're talking about kids, little kids, toddlers often, staying in dangerous, scary places full of very scary men a lot of the time, surrounded by drug dealers and sex traffickers. And they're living in these places for months and months on end, and it changes their whole personality, their whole outlook on life, their chances, their mental, their physical health, everything. And we've had women reporting sexual assault, rape, and a lot of trafficking, a whole lot of trafficking going on, which again, the authorities seem to be turning a blind eye to, because these places break the law again and again, and there's never been any penalties applied to them. So these sorry.
No, I just wanted to. I don't want to. I just wanted to stop here because I think it. I started. I named the stream with the first. I started with Hotel Mafia gangster hoteliers. And I think this would be a good time maybe for you to clarify what you mean by that. I know that we've talked about it before, that you mentioned that these places are getting all kinds of money. There's to provide housing for refugees, people who need emergency housing. And you said they had over like 13,000 violations that they're technically or shouldn't be housing anybody, but yet it keeps on going on. So maybe you could expand a bit by what you mean about how the hotel mafia and why you choose that word, because I know you choose your words carefully.
Well, there's 40 hotels just in Glasgow that are providing this service, most of which are owned by just two families. They we've had hundreds of millions spent on them so far. Last year, I believe it was 54 million for the year. Next year, it's projected to be 66 million spent on the hotel accommodation. It goes up and up. They keep putting their prices up, and they can, because the council has nowhere else to put people. So the answer that you get all the time is like, well, what can we do? We need these hotels. It still doesn't really explain why they're allowed away with everything. There's never any penalty. There's never any fines applied or whatever. So it seems that they are protected from the law in that sense. People that try to call attention to this issue are being targeted. So we have a night shelter that the council are determined to close down. And the reason for that appears to be, the reason they're giving is that they didn't have the correct planning permission to use the building in the way that it's being used. But the real reason, I think, is because they're working with a legal agency, and every single person that comes through their doors and that gets housed for the night and given shelter for the night gets sat down and fills out a plan and a form, and a letter gets sent to the council saying, why have you breached your legal duty to shelter this person for the night? So that's why they're trying to shut them down, because they're trying to hold them to account at the same time as the police and other agencies are dumping people on their doorstep. The council are trying to close them down. So not only these people making money hand over fist for dangerously substandard illegal accommodation, there is also, an undeniable, you would only need to go and stand outside one of these hotels in the city center for 5 minutes and you would see drug dealing happening. And you may well see teenage girls being accosted or buying drugs off a big gang of dodgy looking men. Like, you would not have to hang around long to notice it. But somehow there is no police presence. There seems to be no security, no safety, no oversight in these places whatsoever. So increasingly, my suspicion is, and it's one of these things where policymakers are so far behind normal people who just walk in the city center and see what's going on, or especially the people who actually have stayed in these places, because they are 100% convinced that the owners of the hotels, that the police, that the policymakers are in cahoots, that they all know what's going on, and that it's one big virtuous cycle where they're all helping each other to make money. So unfortunately, I would not put it past the families that run these hotels to also be involved in the drug dealing, the drug trafficking, and the trafficking of women that goes on. Increasingly, women who report violent assaults to staff in the hotels are threatened and told that if they don't keep their mouths shut, they'll get kicked out on the street. So people have learned not to contact the authorities, not even to phone an ambulance. In some cases, when somebody was having, for example, an overdose, they're being told not to phone ambulances. The staff frequently are themselves potentially working illegally a lot of the time. So they're afraid as well. So on one occasion, for example, some paramedics turned up because a guy was having an overdose, and the staff ran out the fire escape to avoid dealing with the so just so much exploitation going on at every possible level, in every possible way. So much money being made, like insane amounts. It's a whole industry now. I've seen somebody's been calling it the homeless industrial complex, and that's absolutely what it is now. It is an industry. And everybody wants to argue about it as if it's a resource issue, that we don't have enough resources. There is plenty of money out there, and it is being covered up by these absolute gangsters. So I blame the owners, I blame the police, and I blame anyone in the council who has not been screaming and tearing their hair out about this, and anyone in a position of power, especially in terms of housing and communities, because this has been an obvious problem that has been growing for a long time, and it has inevitably led to increased racial tensions. Because, and this wasn't the case until just recently, but now, as of the most recent statistics that came out last month, over half of the people staying in these hotels are now asylum seekers. That wasn't the case until just recently, and I think people need to remember that these hotels this is where they put homeless people. So it's not just refugees. It's not just.
So and excuse me if you said this before. How long has this been kind of the de facto or just an official policy to use certain hotels as homeless shelters or emergency accommodation shelters?
I couldn't tell you when it began. It was certainly always a thing. But the homeless problem wasn't big enough that, I mean, we had a few. Generally, it was men. I did know women that were put in these places before, but usually only for a couple of weeks tops. And it would often be a refugee family, and then the refugee council would come in and find them a place, for example. So it would be people that maybe didn't have recourse to public funds. So something would have to be figured out with other agencies, that kind of thing. But it was not normal to put women, and especially not women with children, in that kind of accommodation. And also the accommodation was much less cramped. And I don't know, I think the conditions have definitely worsened because they can get away with a lot more now. So I think the reason that women and children in particular ended up being increasingly housed in that kind of accommodation, frankly, is because we got rid of all the feminists. We got rid of all the feminists from any organization, from any government think tank policy group that might affect policy. We purged them all. We said no one's allowed to talk about single sex spaces anymore. And as a result, I don't think it was a deliberate choice or a deliberate thing that was pushed. It just happened. And the people that would have usually been there to call attention to it and to say, no, hang on, this is a problem, just weren't there. Or they were being
because how can you shouldn't assume that someone's a man or a woman. Yes.
Well, there's that too.
How do you know? How do you know that?
I have yet to see a single trans identified person turn up in the statistics. As far as I'm aware, there aren't.
No, I was making that quib because when you said they got rid of all the feminists, I'm assuming you mean all the feminists that didn't go along with gender identity and would say things like, well, what about single sex spaces, when single sex or sex became like a bad word?
And a lot of people would, a lot of people would be like, oh, she's saying that unless you're a TERF, you're not a feminist. And it's like, well, okay, well, where were they then? Why didn't the SNP or anyone in the Green Party call attention to this before? Because I'm sorry, but the ones that care about single sex spaces are the ones who care about the safety of women. And the ones that don't, and that kept their mouths shut or stuck the boot in when feminists were having these arguments, they're not the ones that are going to put their necks out to try to defend these women and to make the changes, especially when there's huge amounts of money, changing hands, and very powerful people who seem to be in a position where they want to continue to ignore this situation, or who are making money out of this situation. So I very much think that this is partially the effect of that discourse taking hold and it becoming very untrendy and very dangerous for your career as a politician to start drawing attention to these things.
Yes, and so if I just to see if I understand this, and for our listeners, that there seems to be a configuration of factors. So when you have, since I guess probably, I don't know when it happened in earnest in Scotland, but I just remember thinking that one of the Thatcher things was about, privatization of the council houses and ownership society and this type of thing. So you have a decreased stock of what you guys call social housing or council housing. Yeah. So every council would have so much housing, in a certain stock of housing. So that's been decreasing. And then you also have the various economic ups and downs, and then the increasing refugee and immigration. And so you have so you have those factors, and then you have the vested economic interests of the people that make money. I'm assuming they get paid per person per night or something like that for housing people in their hotels. And it seems that nobody is in a big rush to enforce the regulations or to take care of the criminality that is springing up around these areas.
That's right. And in Glasgow, we've got the added issue that we have homelessness legislation in Scotland, which is on the surface very progressive. So it was brought in back in, I couldn't tell you the exact date, but it was actually the last Labour government that introduced it, and then it was brought in by the early SNP government. Everybody in Scotland has a right to housing, has a right to shelter, and this is where this local authority, be it having this legal obligation to house people that present as homeless, comes from. The problem with that is that people are now coming to Glasgow to present as homeless. So this is partly, it's not so much that the UK, that the Foreign Office is sending them all to Glasgow. It's just that as a result of the legislation that we have, people are coming here because they think that this is their best chance of getting housed. And so it has been a big strain on the housing in Glasgow. I would argue that this, because obviously this is the main thrust of the arguments that the racists are making, or that Reform have seized on here in Scotland. But but the numbers aren't that big. We're a small country, right? So a few thousand people seems like a really big deal. But if we could just figure out a way of, for a start, if we're going to have loads of extra people to house, it's mind-boggling to me that it never occurred to either the Scottish government or the councils to say, can we have some more money for housing? That seems like a really obvious thing to do, and none of them seem to have wanted to do it. Saying we should have more money for housing, we should be building houses. We should also be figuring out other solutions like, well, if other local authorities aren't taking in their fair share of people and they aren't housing people, then what's that about? Can we sort that out? Can we get some kind of like system where people are encouraged to go to other towns in Scotland, and then we could have like welcome hubs and things that are geared towards integration and stuff. We've also got this problem that we continue to blow up hundreds of social homes all the time, at the same time as moaning that we don't have enough housing. And it's so there's an awful lot going on, and the hundreds of millions that we're spending on these hotels instead of directing that at like proper homeless services and building homes.
Well, not to mention, I don't know how much, I guess not that Scotland decides this, but I'm assuming that it doesn't help that all the extra cash that goes to Ukraine and now NATO, and well, I guess it's always been NATO, but also, I don't know. I think my country, my home country, provides the bulk of the ammunition to rain down on Gaza. But I know the UK is also involved in that. On this note, I wanted to bring up Craig here. Craig Murray, we have our issues, but he tries.
Since you've brought him up, right?
Okay, no, but I just wanted to bring this up because I'll read this and then I'll let you respond.
Okay.
And then I also want to get to Jerry's comment. So Jerry's comment, maybe we'll get to that first. Jerry, hi Jerry. She says, I assume that the use of hotels was ramped up in 2020 due to them not being used to lockdowns. So was that something that happened and they thought, hey, this is a good idea. We can,
it did
our friends in the hotel industry.
Absolutely. I mean, I know we had been using them before. I think as the crisis has exploded, more and more of these places are just seeing it as an easy way to make money, and it's way easier than running an actual hotel, and of course way more lucrative.
Well, I'm assuming, they're not. It's not like they're having maid service every day, so it's just probably kind of like just I don't know, security or something, or someone who has to take the cut of the drug money. Sorry, allegedly. I don't want to. I have visions of The Wire in my head now, so it's.
That's what Glasgow's like, basically. It's like living in a giant.
Now I really want to go. But I wanted to ask also because I'm sorry, let me circle back a bit before we go on to Craig. This is or your comment to him. So what you're saying is that it's probably a mistake to attribute the criminality and the degeneracy that's developing around these areas to people's the village their grandparents came from in rural Pakistan and stuff like this. And not to get away that people, obviously, before someone jumps on me, obviously what somebody does, they're doing, but the context is what you're saying is that it seems that the structures couldn't be, seems like they're almost trying to encourage this type of behavior. And then people see this behavior and the first thing they see is like, oh, well, there's all these immigrants here or these refugees or whatever. And they're coming in and look at all this crime and the trafficking and this and that. Because that's the first thing they would notice. And it seems what you want to make clear is that, okay, people are responsible for the actions that they take. But if you look at the context, it's not surprising that these things are developing in this way. And there's a lot of people who are not coming over on the boat, as I like to say, that are making quite a bit of money, that are probably just as, bright white as I am. Not that obviously you can tell by my accent, I'm not from these parts, but go ahead.
Yes, I have spoken to countless people now that have stayed in the hotels. I've been following them all very closely. We get monthly stat updates about what's going on in the hotels, how many people are dying, what they're dying of a lot of the time, as well as speaking to various politicians and organizations, charities, etc. I have not seen any evidence whatsoever that your ethnicity makes you more or less likely to either engage in these criminal activities or to be a victim of them. Not at all. What I'm seeing is it's a social issue that is being created, and it's just a really obvious one to me. I mean, especially when you see kind of gender critical feminists who had such a good analysis of why single sex spaces were important, who were saying all along, look, no, you can't have men sharing certain kinds of spaces with women where they're at their most vulnerable. That will lead to danger. And then those same people turning around and saying, oh, sexual assault and violence against women happens because Islam. And you're like, what? Hang on, I thought you had a sex-based analysis of this, and now you're saying it's all because they're foreign. So, well, maybe it's not about, maybe it was never about same-sex single-sex spaces at all to begin with. What you've got is they're taking largely young men, because the ratios of men to women in these places are well, I'd seen 14-1 as like an average basically across them, but there's one in town where they have like 250 odd rooms, and at one point they had 4 women staying in it. So that's like, the women are hugely outnumbered by the men. So even if the vast majority of those men are completely sound, nice, gentle people that are actually looking out for you and protecting you and all the rest of it, what are the chances that you're gonna get some crap off one of them? Do you know what I mean? And so a lot of women are self-excluding from these services and have done for ages. They would rather, a lot of them, sleep under a bridge. And I don't even mean in the summer, I mean in the winter in Glasgow, where it's sub-zero temperatures. They would rather go and sleep under a bridge with people that they know than have to be in these places where there are men that they don't know, banging on their door, following them into their room, etc. And you can't tell a manager, you can't tell the staff, because they're nowhere to be found. And if you do tell them, they'll say it's your fault, and they'll threaten to kick you out. Very, very little protection. In fact, the only protection these women have is from the good men in those hotels, because obviously there are a lot of good men. And there's a community among homeless people. They do look out for each other. For all that a lot of them have a lot of problems and issues themselves, they do actually really try. It's the people that have nothing, that are the ones that are more likely to go out of their way to try to help and protect each other. But the problem you've got is you're putting mostly young men, and a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of them with addiction issues, trauma, possibly previous incarceration, etc. You're sticking them all in a place together for months and months and months on end. Grinds you down. I've spoken to mothers of young men that died in these hotels, who've died of overdoses, etc. Some of them had never taken drugs before. They'd never been on drugs before. But after 40 odd weeks of staying in somewhere that grim, that depressing, being treated like an animal, some of them end up turning to, someone offers you, maybe even out the kindness, offers you a Valium to help you sleep. You take it, one of them's dodgy, that's your life gone. And it's completely
well, and this is nothing new. That I can't remember the term of it now from various law procedure shows, but there's certain categories of people who are predators are going to prey upon. Of course, homeless people and homeless women and homeless young women, and if you add also who have their worked on their immigration status or have young kids, I mean, and then you put them with in a place that's like basically like slum hotel, and with their they're outnumbered by men 50-1 or 40-1. It's like, it's not surprising that things are going to happen, which is not to excuse the people who do it. So crazy. I wanted to ask just the geography of this. Are these hotels spread out throughout Glasgow, or are they in certain neighborhoods? Because I can't imagine. I'm assuming they're not in the really swanky parts of Glasgow. Assuming there is still a swanky part of Glasgow.
We do get, there's one, for example, on the south side that's it's bordering on Govan Hill, which can be a bit rough, but it's in a pretty nice part of Glasgow. in Shawlands, and it's called the Queen's Park Hotel, and it is absolutely notorious. It's had, I think, 7 people have died there since the beginning of the year. It's had more call outs. What is it? Over 400 call outs in a year for the police. My friend was put in there a few years ago, and on our very first night, a guy pushed his way into her room and raped her. And so, like, yeah, it seems to happen all over, but the really big ones are concentrated in the city center, in sort of a square, so they're all fairly close to each other, and that's where it's getting scary now. Like, I never felt scared walking around Glasgow, and I'm like approaching 40. I don't get much crap off young men in the street anymore, but I am scared now walking in Glasgow city centre, because there's just a vibe. There's a real, there's crack being smoked in broad daylight everywhere you go, being dealt, big gangs of guys hanging around dealing, often with, like, a real kind of sad case, vulnerable looking young women, or just women hanging around with them. Lots of women begging, lots of people of both sexes begging, but a lot more women than I'd ever seen before. And I mean, because I've been working with, trying to get women that have experience of the hotels to speak out about it. And there was one in particular that was helping me, and we went looking for this girl that had been attacked a couple of nights previously, in the hope of speaking to her, and to offer her some support, obviously. And she kind of took me under her wing and said, all right, Laura, pretend you're homeless, pretend you're looking for a place for the night. And I was walking around with her, and like, I already don't feel safe just walking around as me, anonymous me. But for her, having stayed a couple of months in one of these hotels, she was recognized by everybody. They all clocked her as somebody that had been in the hotels. And it was like she was just a magnet. All these guys were approaching her, asking her for money for drugs, like, instantly. And then we bumped into some women on the street, and we started chatting to them. And like, in 5 minutes, some guy walks up and starts screaming at them. One of them, oh, you owe me money, or you stole money off my friend, or whatever. And all these girls basically had to stand on the street corner and try to talk this guy down. And I realized it was because there was no point running away. There was no point trying to get rid of him or shake him off, because they're just going to have to deal with him again later on the same day or the next day. So it's like they had to deal with it there and then. And most of them are walking around with bruises or cuts or whatever, like they're all wearing obvious signs of violence. And so, yeah, as an actual homeless woman, like, terrifying, absolutely terrifying, just to be in that, situation. And you're just in constant survival mode. You need to find friends. You need to find people that you can have with you, as much as possible. And the ones that are, a bit weaker, more vulnerable, more traumatized, like, do not stand a chance. And the likelihood that you will just stick yourself to the least bad, the least scary guy that you can find, to keep the others at bay. I mean, you'd be daft not to.
Yeah.
That's your only chance of survival a lot of the time. And again, if you don't go back to the hotel, or if you don't have a hotel, or if you don't go back on time one night, because you need to be there by curfew every night, or you lose your room. So
when's the curfew?
I couldn't tell you, actually. Is it 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock? I'm not sure which one. Maybe it's 10. But if you're not back one night, so there was one girl, she'd had guys banging on her door, and she was terrified, and she went and stayed with a friend one night, and then that was her. She's out on the street. And then last we knew, she's staying in some house somewhere with a bunch of guys, and it's kind of hard to get in touch with them again after a while. Like, they use their phones a lot, or they're just not, you can't contact them for whatever reason.
So it seems that I know that you and some other people are trying to keep a focus on this issue. But given the money, and given the financial, the economic incentives to maintain the status quo, and it seems that the the narrative that's taking off is that it's something to do with the ethnicity or the religion of the people who are most noticeable in and around these hotels. What do you see? Are you at all hopeful? I know you can't control the economy, but in terms of is there going to have to be some sort of really bad situation that happens before people realize, oh, okay, we can't keep on keeping on how we are with this hotel setup and this kind of this kind of archipelago of criminality and that the police are just kind of pretending isn't there.
Well, the hotels are, they've basically become giant recruitment centers for organized crime. So that's what they are. And Craig Murray's thing about how they should let them work is, partly true. Obviously, if you have a bunch of guys stuck in these places and they basically can't work, what are they going to do? Like, because there'll be guys hanging around outside every day saying, why don't you, sell this package for me? And, that's how they get into it. And obviously the less scrupulous ones will end up, targeting young girls because young girls are money too, but a lot of them are working. This is the problem. A lot of them are working illegally for people that are more than happy to pay £2 an hour as a, wage. And so this is another reason why people in Glasgow are starting to get, more drawn in by the kind of reformy type arguments, is that it's harder to get jobs now because there are people that are working for basically slave, wages. But the problem there isn't the poor people that are being exploited. Why is no one looking at the guys paying these wages? It's the same problem, with the left refusing to look at the hotels. Like they're coming out in support of the hotels almost. They're having these demonstrations, to counter the far right that are, marching around saying, we need to burn them down and all the rest of it, which, I'm scared that is going to start happening. It happened in Ireland. It's been happening in Ireland for a while. And it's really dangerous putting people in these ghettos, essentially. But the left just comes out and goes, oh, we'll all get together and we'll have a bunch of banners and we'll scream at them and call them racist until they magically evaporate. And that's not going to work. Like, you need to have an alternative explanation for why this stuff is going on, for why people are less safe, why the wages are going down, etc. And the problem is, as it always is, because there's a buck to be made, and where there are vulnerable people that you can make money out of, you can bet that there'll be people lining up to do that. And those are the people that you need to direct your anger against.
Well, and also, like you mentioned, the electoral strategy, that it's also, if you can make your pitch around taking your country back, wink, wink, and pointing the finger at the party in power for not doing enough about it. I mean, that's kind of a bit of getting elected on the cheap, I'd say. But Craig Murray said, I have a suggestion. Allow asylum seekers to work as they used to. Then they can feed and house themselves and pay tax towards all the other stuff.
Yeah, I wonder how many houses Craig Murray has. Like,
well, also, he's kind of like,
and you rent them out for? Like, is it the kind of rent that you could be paid £2 an hour and rent them off him? Like,
well, it's kind of funny. It's like, wait, has anybody thought about people getting jobs and then they make money and then they use that money to buy the things they need, like housing? Yeah, no, sorry. He's we all have
I am livid with Craig Murray at the moment. And
okay, but let's
sorry.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Craig, we love, it's tough love, baby. So you respond to him that we have been campaigning for years to stop social housing demolitions, get people out of hotels into proper homes, exposing the conditions, the deaths, and the hundreds of millions made by the gangster hotel owners. Why didn't you support us then? Yeah. And
so this is that photo, right? So that's us standing outside the Mafia Hotel in Erskine a couple of years back, which was housing. I think it was all refugees. It wasn't a mix. It was all refugees that had a lot of whom I think had been made homeless again as a result of the MS Ambition, the stupid cruise ship that they had. shutting down or that contract being terminated. So I think that was when a lot of them went to go and stay there. And so this is like stand up to racism, and people like that went and picketed because there was a whole bunch of locals that started going there and having these protests about how this kind of situation makes our children less safe and all the rest of it. And we went along to say, because we were in the middle of this campaign to try to save 600 social homes from being blown up by the Wheatley Group on a generous grant of 100 million from the Scottish government, because for some reason these giant corporations can't pay for their own development programs. We have to pay for it, several times, because we pay for it with our tax dollars, and then we pay for it again when all our rents go up and we get priced out of our neighborhood. But this is us basically saying, look, it was 500 at the time because there were still 100 people, 100 flats occupied. We've got all these flats sitting empty. They've been sitting empty for months. Why can't we put people in flats? Why can't they have actual flats instead of being in these hotels? And for the same or less money than you're spending on these hotels, you could set up like, a hub, or, like we were talking about, you could actually, create proper mixed communities of people in proper housing that have a chance of actually making a proper life for themselves here. And we sold this idea to the council, and we said, well, look, instead of having this, and we weren't even necessarily saying instead of blowing them up, this could have been before you blow them up, because in the end they sat there empty for 3 years. 600 empty flats, some of them 2 bedrooms, in the middle of a housing crisis, for no good reason.
Are you saying that sometimes markets don't work well enough? Are you saying sometimes there could be a market failure, or there could be intervening factors that get in the way of supply and demand and price fluctuations? I need to take a seat, Laura, if you're going to tell me this. Okay.
The thing is, some of the, and I remember at the time, like, people are so, because we had a whole lot of different kinds of people got involved in that campaign. So we had environmentalists who were worried about the environmental side of things. We had people that just loved brutalist architecture. We had people that were very kind of staunchly socialist, like we must have a return to council housing, blah, blah, blah. And at this time, the Ukraine thing was in the news massively, right? And Sturgeon had just announced that we were going to have, I think it was like 5,000 refugees were going to be coming to Glasgow from Ukraine. And now, like, it wasn't a Ukraine thing for me, particularly, but it was a thing that we could use, and we were trying to throw everything we possibly could at this campaign to try to keep those flats up. Just to keep the housing stock up, and so I got a bunch of people together and said, well, look, why don't we propose these flats as a solution to the incoming, the influx of Ukrainian refugees? We could say, well, look, we've got all these lovely flats right here ready to go. Why not use them? And I had people in the campaign then were like, oh no, that looks like we're pro Zelensky and stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, well, okay, fine, blow them up then. Who cares? Because we don't want to look like we're on the wrong side of that argument. It's just like, people need to just, be a little bit more realistic sometimes. Anyway, we put a lot of pressure on the council. And we had the guy from the Ukraine Solidarity group came out, and the Refugee Council came out, and they took pictures, and they were like, oh, this is great. And they went back, and he'd had a sit-down meeting that same week that we met him. He'd sat down with Nicola Sturgeon. So do you know what I mean? It felt like these people had a bit of clout at the time. And so they pushed it, and bless him, he really tried. And he spoke to the housing minister at the time. And there were whispers in the council, and we were getting leaked information that this was actually going to happen, and they were going to use the flats to house refugees. And then basically Wheatley objected, and they backed off. And it was as simple as that, because apparently Wheatley controls housing policy in this country. It's not the politicians, it's the corporations, as usual. So yeah, those flats sat empty for 3 years. So that's us in front of the Erskine Hotel saying, yeah, like, we've got an answer to these. And I mean, we turned up, and it was Patriotic Alternative who I think have renamed themselves as Homeland. And I'd printed out a bunch of leaflets about how we had all these empty flats and that. And we turned up, me and the two old fellas from our organization. We parked, and we happened to park right beside where they had their stall. So the kind of picket of, people yelling about racism were a bit further away. And we just walked right up to them and said, well, here's our solution. And obviously they were like, well, we would only want Scottish people staying in those flats, kind of thing, because it's not about housing to them. But they had all these big banners that said end homelessness. So already, like, they were starting to use that, and it's quite sophisticated. You know what I mean? Like, these were not football hooligan type fascists. These were they clearly thought about their messaging, and they'd done a lot of work engaging with the local population, and they'd been putting on public meetings. And so we went up and we were saying, like, well, would you support this? Do you think this is a good idea? And obviously they were like, we don't like socialists, or we don't like the idea of refugees staying anywhere. And it was like, okay, well, I mean, if you cared about housing, then I think you would be in favor of this. But we had a kind of an interesting conversation or whatever, because I want to talk to people. I want to know what they actually think.
Yeah.
And then we went and joined the picket. But when we left, there was about 40, 50 people standing around with them, and I don't think it's as simple as you just can dismiss them as a bunch of fascists. I mean, those guys were. They were there. But the local population,
Go ahead,
they
sorry.
were being manipulated, but you could see where their concerns came from, and a bunch of students screaming racist at them wasn't going to change their minds.
Well, no, and also the thing is that, and we're gonna, and you touched upon this, and we'll hopefully talk about it a bit more when we get to why elites love to scapegoat immigrants in Islam. Is that, if you want to, I mean, in terms of the push and pull factors of what pushes people to migrate and what attracts them to various places, you need a political economic analysis to be able to understand that. But that doesn't mean that people aren't going to have all kinds of feelings and preferences about changes, whether how objective or perceptive they are, or subjective or objective they are. And that, most people, for most of the plan that I'm aware of, we like to live among people who look like us and sound like us, and this kind of shared history or whatever. And there is something to the fact that they have a point when they're good. The people on the quote unquote left who just want to say that anybody who want to put just like a racist, not racist, or xenophobe, not xenophobe binary on the immigration debate, which is also the flip side of the coin of we have to, it's all Islam or these particular countries, and they're just bad because something in the blood and the water, and we got to get out. However, that you got to figure it out. It's like if you have a freedom of association, and there's going to be a sense of first come, of entitlement. And I'll just use an example. Like if I were to go to some place that I don't look anything like, let's say, I'll just say Japan, and I even got citizenship there, and I started to say I'm Japanese, that would be weird. Like I live in China, or not China, sorry, or I live in Japan, I'm a resident. But if I started saying I'm Chinese or Japanese, people would be like, well, And so when people use that argument here, like when you say who's English or who's Welsh or who's Scottish, and they want to say that anybody who is here is from here, then is this way. You can see why that argument is also problematic. There is culture, there is roots, there is history. A lot of people prefer to live among their own kind, and that's not just a UK thing. But you have that, and then you also have the push and pull economic factors of what drives people out of certain places and attracts them to other places. And at the end of the day, what the factors that push people, because most people don't tend to want to just leave their country and everything they know and go off to stay in a nasty hotel someplace. Most people don't want to do that. But to understand that the factors that are causing these issues, to blame either the people who don't like that they feel like they're losing, that their country is change, that the demographic shifts, or the cultural shifts they experience, or the people want to be like, oh, they're just racists. I mean, that's just going to get us where we are here, slinging dirt at each other. And so it's hard to have that because, and I don't have a solution. I just think that I'm really sensitive to the fact that some people, I'm not saying that you're doing this, and I try not to do it, but to be like, oh, it's just an economic thing, and it's just the economics. And if everything was going all right, then no one would care about these demographic changes. And I don't think that's true. I think they're exacerbated a lot by it, for sure. But so I guess I lost my point there, but I just wanted to put that out there, that I think I totally think it's so important to talk to the variety of sides. I mean, there's some people who are beyond the pale, I mean, like, they're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
But most people, if you have a chance to talk to them, it also, you get to see your blind spots and biases as well, I think, and it can help because we're all on this rock together. Not that I want to start singing Kumbaya now, but do you have anything to add to any of my
I think there is a cultural component, to stuff. Like we've talked about it before. Like I mean, you've stayed all over the world, obviously, so you've seen kind of culture clashes of different kinds. And I grew up in Belgium, and in Brussels, used to get an awful lot of street harassment as a young girl, as a teenager. And a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it came from, North African minority young men. And I suppose it would have been quite easy, especially if, I'd had a family or kind of friends that were kind of, encouraging that attitude, to decide that it's North African men are sexist. But you meet a lot of people and you talk to them, and you realize that, everybody's different, and you meet a lot of North African men that are not scary predator type.
Yeah. And
you realize actually maybe it's not. It's not that, and I mean, especially if you then go to North Africa and you realize that there aren't just gangs of guys grabbing teenage girls all over in the street. And stuff,
no, I didn't want to. What I was trying to say is that how to get away from the fact of doing what we just did, so that it's possible to want to have some sort of continuity, or to want to whatever I'll just use the words like, it doesn't, like, England doesn't feel like England anymore. The immigration's too fast. We have this, we're losing any kind of sense of continuity or identity. That you can have that without saying, because those people are terrible or barbarians or whatever. It could just be like, well, they say, our food's this, their food's that, our holidays are this, our holidays are, there can be differences without the demonization, I guess I could say. And so, and that, unless people want there to be all one melting pot, and everything that, the reason why we have all these different cultures and practices and languages were because there was some separation. And not to make it good or bad, but I'm just saying is there a way to want to talk about preserving, a way of life, a culture, heritage, without it digressing into these people are bad and that's why we want to keep them out, to have change it from, like, you don't have to say that you're going to be raped or that everyone's going to start raping everybody in order to in order to have a more conservative or a different immigration policy.
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, it takes a little bit of effort and it takes a little bit of funding. The British left has a real problem with the idea of integration. They think integration means, you become British, you wrap yourself in a Union Jack, and you never talk about where you came from or practice your own culture, religion, or whatever ever again. And in Brussels, which is and I'm not going to say it's perfect and there's no racism and all that. Obviously there is. But I do think there have been successful attempts. For example, having multicultural, community centers and stuff that actually
Yeah, but what I want to
encourage
ask you,
kids
Laura,
and
is that
parents to
do
hang
people have
out.
a choice in that? What if they don't want a multicultural thing? What if
Mm.
they want more
Well,
homogeneity?
honestly,
Are we going to
tough,
say that's
right?
wrong?
Well, the problem with all these kind of people that are yelling about like, oh, their culture doesn't mix with ours, etc. They are gonna have to suck it up because
Mm,
we live in a global economy.
mm,
You know, this idea that you can build a giant fence and keep them out,
mm,
or sink the boats, or stop the boats, you know,
mm,
or end immigration forever is nonsense. It's a fantasy. It's never
mm.
going to happen. You know, it's been the
Okay,
case for
but are you
tens of
sure
thousands
about
of
that?
years.
Because what I would say is I'm not, I mean, obviously, like, also against the economic factors, it's like, you know, we could get into the thing if depending on what the birth rate is, depending on what the economy is, you know, there's a reason why. It's not just because we want to be cool and hip and have a, you know, and have a United Colors of Benetton on every city center, but there is certain types of labor that people want to come in. Of course, like you mentioned, oftentimes it could be what they
Mhm,
call high skilled, or it could be low or no skilled, and they like to pay
mhm,
them less money, and that does suppress wages. There's a reason why unions tend to be not hip, extremely hip on immigration. Um, but what I want to say is that there are countries, for example, I'll just say China, and this could change because their birth rate has issues, but they don't have a lot of in-migration in
mhm.
China.
Well, they
And
don't
they're
need
quite,
it.
and
They
they're
don't
quite
need it right
yeah,
now.
but all I wanted to say is this idea that you just have to accept it. There's going to be a lot of immigration and just figure it out. That's not true to that degree. I mean,
I
there's,
we're not China though.
yeah.
We're a very, very cutthroat
Mm,
capitalist, like declining, falling apart at the seams
mm,
nation that is
mm,
determined to pay lower and lower wages,
mm,
and squeeze people. And like, I
mm,
don't believe for a second that there is anyone, not Starmer, not Farage, not anyone in this country who
mm.
is actually serious about stopping the boats and
Yeah.
stopping migration. The cynic in me actually thinks that all
Mm,
this hotel stuff is
mm,
deliberate because I've
mm,
actually seen, you know, previously what I would consider to be quite reasonable, sensible people
mm,
calling for the creation of concentration camps, saying that they want these people now, for public
mm,
safety's sake,
mm,
to be rounded up in
mm,
giant camps of the kind that they're already building in a lot of places, like in Ireland, where they'll have them in, you
mm,
know, really just basic accommodation,
mm,
fences, guard dogs, you know, towers with
mm,
armed guards, etc. At the same time as we're talking about the creation of special economic zones, etc.
mm,
So I don't know. I can see them just rounding them all up, and putting
mm,
them in concentration camps where they
mm.
will then work for basically for free.
Lots of little gauzes. Yeah.
That's how we're supposed to revive
Mhm,
our dwindling
mhm.
economy in this
No, and I
in this
wanted to, as a
global.
caveat, I just meant like, yeah, under the current structures that under the current economic structures that we live in. Yeah, I totally agree with your previous statement about immigration and about how, you know, these people who are stoking the pot, either they are terrible at economics or looking at the things, or they're just being cynical and using this issue for to you know, to divide and conquer. But yeah, I just wanted to say that if you look at in terms of send what they call it in the rhetoric, the immigration studies, you know, sending countries and receiving countries, that there are still the majority of the countries are don't have the migration or the whatever you want to call it, the diversity level or the amount of people who weren't born in the country or first generation. And of course, another thing that a lot of people on the right or the left who just want to talk about racism, whether it's okay, you know, whether it, you know, have it be on a racial issue or a cultural issue, is that the countries that are having the most increased migration from different parts of the from other parts of the world, and the lowest birth rates happen to be the countries that were colonizers and the most imperialist. So there is a bit of if you look
Yeah.
at the historic, if you back up a bit and look at the longer picture, what we see right now starts to make a lot more sense, and you start to see how limited focusing on race and culture can be. Not that it's not important.
Yeah, I mean, Scotland is I mean, it's a weird kind of one historically, because you could say that Scotland is part of the UK, and the UK is this, massive imperialist nation,
Mm.
but also Scotland is frequently not done very well out of that deal. And we have a huge problem with emigration, like loads of Scots every year fleeing the country because they can't get decent jobs anymore. Or can't, like it's just getting worse and worse. And we have an
Mm.
underpopulation problem. We had the Highland clearances and we never recovered
Mm.
from that. So actually, it'd be
Mm.
great if we could get more people
Yeah.
and build more towns, up north, and start
Mm.
making use of our natural resources. But
Mm.
unfortunately, we need to get out of this union to
Mm.
have a chance in hell of making that
Mm.
happen.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the population debate gets focused on the color of the womb, rather than just the amount. And that if you have an aging population and you have your population structure is starting to go like this, that's a problem. You
Yeah.
need people who are going to provide the goods and services and pay the taxes for the people as they get into their 70s and 80s and whatnot. And yeah, so yeah, I think it's for sure. Anything else you want to say about this before we take a moment and then come back to elite scapegoating? And we're saving for the last the Glenner debate. Is he a
Um,
martyr, a hero, a fake free speech hero? What's going on? Both. Um, it's an interesting prism to look at the free speech debate. So, anything to round up hotel mafia, housing crisis, Scotland before we move on to taking England back and remigration and
Um, well, I'll
symbols
just
of
just a
Islam.
plug. Please sign, if you're in England or really anywhere. Please sign the Change.org petition for increased provision of emergency accommodation for women, single
Mhm.
sex accommodation that is adequate for women and children. And if you're in Scotland, if you could sign the petition to Scottish government, the same title, makes a big difference. And if you have experience of staying in one of these hotels as a woman, um, please get in touch, because obviously we could share that anonymously. Nobody needs to put their name or anything on it, but every bit of testimony that we can collect helps us when we go into meetings with policymakers. So yeah, and if you would like to get involved in the campaign, then I can add you to a mailing list, and please follow us on Twitter. You don't need to follow me if you don't like the Palestine stuff. You can follow the specific page for the campaign. But yeah, please do get involved.
Yeah, and I just want to thank props to you, Laura, because you're for and the people you work with, staying in the trenches, working on this issue that seems so obvious that you can't get people to pay a bit of attention to or just do the things that they should be doing. So I just want to I'm glad to know that you're out there, and yeah, please do support Laura. And I should say that we're streaming on 4 locations now. So I'm on X, Rumble, Substack if it's working, and and YouTube. I can only see I'm on my own now tonight. I can only see the comments right now if you are commenting on YouTube. I can't see them anyplace else, but I will look at them later. And any of them that are not just trolly, I will try to respond to. And I'll also, underneath the comments on X later and also on Rumble and YouTube, I will put the contact information to all the stuff that Laura just
I
mentioned.
just there noticed that we never commented on the Dundee, the girl in Dundee with the axe.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
someone is
let's just,
reminded
and
of.
everyone right now, if you could do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, wherever you are. This is the second season of Morbid Symptoms. We're serious this time. Last year, I was just getting my feet wet. I'm still getting my feet wet, obviously, with the technical setup and not. Mama doesn't have a fat studio yet, but you never know. So please do that. It helps. And I think, surprise, surprise, I must have asked for it or said okay on accident. I was on YouTube and I there's this part where they tell you they're always trying to sell you stuff. I don't go there very often, but I ended up there the other day, and they're like, "Oh, your channel's been monetized, and you can do super chats and this and that." And I thought, how did my channel get monetized with the shit I say? I'm sorry. I was thinking maybe it's a trap. I won't be. I mean, I can't imagine. It's a small channel, but I was just surprised. I thought so. Someone looked at my stuff and were like, "Yeah, we should give that to her." But anyway, so at some point, Laura, I'll have to come up with secret codes so that and let everybody know when we say things, so what we actually mean, so that we can get around the algorithm. Yeah, so we can make some of that sweet cash. Anyway, sorry, people. I was still surprised when I saw that. I was like, what? Okay. Anyway, yes. So please do like and subscribe. Laura, how much time do you have this evening?
Yeah, no, I've got some time. I mean, I wasn't going to go on at length about the Maya and Ruby case, but I could maybe just comment quickly now before we take a wee break.
Sure. I have a slide. Yes. And that actually segues. I think actually I was going to save that with the race war stuff. But do you want, but it's hard because it goes into the, taking England back or taking Britain back and the rape of Britain, that whole storyline. But of course it has also happened in Scotland. So I'll leave it to you. Do you want me to bring it up now?
Well, we can do it after if you want. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, now I feel bad. Let me find it because it's kind of funny. And you can tell us what this person means actually. This oh gosh, is it the last slide? Oh, here we go. Okay. So,
yeah, well, I mean, my initial reaction to this.
First, you're gonna have to tell people what happened.
Okay, sorry. So a video emerged, and it only kind of starts halfway through the incident of this girl being filmed by your man here on the right. She's got a not a sword and an axe, a small kind of machete thing and a knife, and she's kind of. She's backing away from the camera. She's clearly not attacking him with the weapons. She's backing away, and she's saying, "You beat up my sister. Stay away from her. She's only 12." And the guy's going, "Show us the weapons. Show us the weapons." And I mean, he's got what he needs on camera. If that was his thing, he continues to film her, and he's walking towards her. Anyway, so there was a lot of rumors circulating about this. The sort of nationalist kind of, surgency kind of movement seized on her as a symbol of, she's standing up for white, British girls, Scottish girls against, invading horde of racist, sexist migrants. So this kind of all this memeing of her with the Scottish flag and then frequently also the British flag, and the paint and stuff started coming out. And so the left, in response to that, went mad in the other direction and we're like, no, this poor innocent man who was walking to the shop with his wife and baby, which turned out to be absolute nonsense. It was his sister who he called to come and help him. But anyway, they were saying that he was attacked by a bunch of preteen girls, which, come on, how often does that really happen? I mean, you get some rough teenagers, but anyway, so that was his side of the story. He immediately got a double-page spread in a broadsheet newspaper. The former First Minister, Humza Yousaf, came out with a statement the very next day saying that he was a victim of racist abuse and harassment. She was arrested that day, obviously, because she was brandishing weapons and caught on camera doing so. Her friends took to TikTok and started saying things in her defense, saying that no, there was no racial element to it. This guy was being a creep, passing comments on them, and they started yelling. And anyway, he called his sister. His sister arrived and they yanked this girl's sister by the hair. This is the 12-year-old, brought her down to the ground and then allegedly started kicking her in the head. And that's when this one went off and got the weapons. Now, it sounds like the kind of altercation that happens a lot. It was an escalation. clearly nobody should be kicking a 12-year-old in the head. That's
Now,
absolutely
is that confirmed, or is that their
that is confirmed. So initially,
okay.
because she hadn't been charged, or the both of them have now been charged, but because
Okay.
only the girl had been charged on the day, everybody left. I mean, these terms mean nothing anymore, you know, but it was like, so everybody had jumped, everyone that cares about racism, you know, whatever you want to call them, had jumped to the conclusion that this guy was completely innocent, and his what they were saying was his wife, which is obviously his sister, that they'd done
Now,
nothing
the
wrong.
picture I have here is the picture that was in the Times. And this is of him and his wife. I'm assuming this is his wife, not his sister, unless they're very close.
This is his wife. Sorry. Yeah, that's his wife, who's 19 and pregnant and had nothing to do with anything, as far as I can tell. It was his sister who assaulted the 12-year-old. So the news today now says that they have both been charged with assault. And
both the girl and the sister.
So the girl was lifted on the day for having the weapons. He and his sister have now been charged with assaulting her sister, who is the 12-year-old.
Okay.
Now, all the girls involved in the incident, I know they might be sugarcoating the truth or whatever to get out of trouble, but I mean, they seem genuine. They're all saying it had nothing to do with race whatsoever, that he was being creepy, saying creepy things, and then obviously that this altercation happened. He called his sister when they were yelling, and she came and assaulted her sister, and that's when she started brandishing the weapons. And to be honest, when I first saw the video, that was kind of like, I could see a scared, angry girl who was trying to defend her sister, and I thought it was pretty badass, to be honest. And I wanted to just stay out of it because, you know, I'm only a little account, and like, I don't need to comment on everything, and you know, these things are very nuanced and you can get in trouble really easily and all the rest of it. But so many people jumped to the conclusion immediately that these 12 and 13-year-old girls had racially abused and assaulted this guy. It seemed very unfair because, I'm sorry, but it's a very, very, very scary, and you are very vulnerable as a 12 or 13-year-old girl. There's lots of men of all sorts of ethnicities walking around who have a real problem with you being a preteen girl and being out and about, and you know, who does she think she is? She needs to be taken down, you know, a notch. And you know, I remember that myself from being that age. Like, it's scary. It's constant harassment, and everything is kind of breaking down, and everybody's feeling less safe and all the rest of it. And this guy, obviously, people went and found him on social media, and he fancies himself a bit of a player, and he has all these videos and images of himself talking about whores and pimping and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, he seems like a lovely, fine, upstanding, you know, young gentleman.
But he also doesn't look like he's Pakistani and Muslim.
No, I think he's sorry, I probably
Bulgarian, and
Bulgarian, right? Okay, I was going to say.
Well, now I don't know because the information that you just gave me, it's the first I heard of that, because I haven't been. I was following other things. So I heard that what I first heard was that two girls were accosted by what was an illegal immigrant or something like that, and she had to go and protect herself because the police wouldn't, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, Jesus, you know. And then it was like, well, hold on, wait a minute, that's just a story. And then I saw and it wasn't just on like quote unquote left-leaning publications, but some middle of the road or right ones were saying, well, no, the police have done their investigation. She was charged. He wasn't. Again, like you said, the story in the Times as well, I think, was that he was walking to the shops with his wife when they were approached.
Well, they chucked the baby in there for good measure as well.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
And so now waiting. But again, so so just like another good example of how something like this happens, and a lot of us, the media and other, and pundits or whatever, and people online, because of the speed, want to immediately put their spin on it, So
especially the former first minister joining in before he knew any of the facts. That was bizarre. Like, this is what it feels like. This stuff is being artificially generated. Like, they want everybody to be at each other's throats about issues to do with race and culture, you know, because this is a thing. And for me, this is a young, I don't even want to say teenage, like preteen girls hanging out in a little group. Got into
Let me tell you, they're no joke. I
guy.
have a 12 and 13-year-old girl. I have two daughters. One's 12, one's 13. And they're, you know, I mean, obviously not, they're not stronger than a man, but attitude wise.
Yeah, well, this one could handle herself, obviously, and good. I'm glad, because if I didn't have a little sister, I had a big sister, and she absolutely would have gone and grabbed a machete to defend me at that age. And I there were times that she came home. She carried a knife for a little bit when she was about 13, because you used to get this kind of stuff all the time, and she did actually pull it on a guy at one point. Because it was constant. I knew lots of young girls that got their faces cut, that got beaten up in metro stations, etc. And sometimes it was an immigrant guy, and sometimes it was a Belgian guy. It's for me, it's a sex thing, and it's a teenage girls being extremely vulnerable thing. It didn't need to become this huge culture war issue that everybody wants. Everything has to be a culture war now. But I thought it was very unfair on her. And very unfair on her sister and everybody else that was there. These are children, basically, you know, and the fact that the left is so ready to disgrace itself time and time again, coming down like a ton of bricks on this girl, putting her face all over the place, saying that she's a racist, abusive harasser. We need to cut this stuff, you know, and it's a misogyny thing, you know. The left is no less misogynistic than the right is when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, that was all I really felt about it. Was like,
no, good. It's a part 2. Because the last I looked at it, I was when I saw the articles that were coming out saying, well, so what happened was that, you know, just basically what you said, that it was that no, the story was cast as that for some reason they were approaching this couple and were brandishing weapons and being, you know, menacing, and he filmed it, and then this whole thing spread that it was actually, you know, an asylum seeker or a Muslim or whoever, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some people in Bulgaria can be Muslims, of course, but I saw pictures of him, and he was, you know, I mean, if he is, he's a fallen one. He's drinking and he's carrying on, which of course you can drink usually if you're a Christian. However, okay, good. So good to know. So there we go. So now they've both been charged, and we'll have to wait and see, I guess, what, if it goes to trial or not, or what happens. All right, so good. So it seems that, according to Laura Jones, that perhaps this meme was well deserved. Even though the person that she was standing up to was neither an illegal immigrant nor Muslim. If she was standing her own and you know, saying, "Hey, we're not gonna take any crap," then that, of course, puts a different spin on the altercation or the event. Yep. All right. Thank you, Laura. Anyway, so should we take like a 5-minute break or 10-minute break and come back? Is that all right?
Yeah, I can go warm up my coffee.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so hi everybody. We're gonna take about a 10-minute break. I always underestimate the amount of time. So we're gonna come back and talk about why a bit more. We'll wrap up. We've kind of covered this a bit, but we'll put some finer points on why it's in the elite's interest, or the ruling elite's interest, to scapegoat immigrants and Islam, as well as the other side to then scapegoat just those darn racists and xenophobes. And if we could just, say nicer things and get our mental attitude better, then all this material stuff just wouldn't matter. And then, of course, Piece de Resistance, we're going to talk about Father Ted, sorry. I'm calling him Martyr Ted. Graham Lineham, and the free speech debate such as it is in the UK. So I'm going to turn on some music. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Lauren. I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. I'm going to put on some music for your listening enjoyment. And then let's see, what kind of music should we have here? Maybe just let's see how this is. It's the set music. That's not bad, huh? All right. And then the banner. I'm going to put that to 10 minutes. Sorry as I talk everyone through this. So please join us back here in about 10 minutes. We're going to talk about the usefulness of scapegoating immigrants in Islam and making this about race and culture rather than about the political economy and how imperialism is hollowing out many, not just the periphery anymore, but also the core countries, and how we need to focus on that to really get at the crux of the things driving so much of this animosity and immiseration and hostility. And then we're going to talk about the Graham Lineham case. So please come back here in about 10 minutes for all of that. Thank you. Let's see. Ooh, I have to turn my microphone back on. Hi, Laura.
Hiya.
Good, you can hear me good. All right, so we took a 10-minute pause for the cause. And we just had finished up talking about, Laura was telling us about the housing crisis situation in Scotland and the details about the kind of the homeless hotel kind of industrial complex that's kind of making a lot of money off the kind of stowing away homeless people in need of emergency accommodation, and also incoming immigrants. And I don't know if it's also half refugees or whatever the numbers are now, and that these areas tend to be breeding grounds for all kinds of antisocial, let we say, behavior that's
You're frozen for me. I don't know if you're frozen for everyone else. Oh, wait. Oh, we lost Tara. I think she's coming back. In the meantime, I'm going to share the change.org petition and the comments under the Twitter post. An active, shameless promotion. So please do go and share and sign that petition if you can. I should put it in the chat as well. Oh, you've lost all of us. Oh, okay. Oh, hello. I think Tara's having a connection issue. I have stuck that petition in the chat, in the comments under the tweet, if anybody wants to sign it. The change.org petition. I feel like I should start singing or something. She is attempting to rejoin us.
There's something wrong with the internet? Okay, well, sorry. Jesus. The door was shut.
Hello.
Tara.
Oh, I'm back. Okay, yeah, I don't know what
Did you
happened.
just switch it off and on again? You did, didn't
No,
you?
I don't know. I have no idea what happened, but it was just like all of a sudden everything just kind of, I got all these error messages, and I was like, and I thought, well, maybe one of my kids unplugged the signal extender, and I was about ready to go raise holy hell. I'm like, I said I was. That's what you heard in the background. I'm like, is the internet off? Okay, sorry. Hi, everyone. It's all right. I have to just gather myself now, because I was like, it's one of those things when you get used to the technology. You're like, how can this be? Why is the internet not working? All right. Hi, everyone. Anyway, let's see. Okay. So, hi, Laura. Thank you for keeping the. Oh, look. Okay, fine. It's going to take a moment. It's all right. Hi, everyone. Okay. So, part 2. Elites and scapegoating immigrants in Islam, or the both a lot of the narratives, to use that word, want to make this about race and culture, and what gets obscured a lot of the time is the political economy, or the economics of this, and also following the money, who benefits from what we would look like, what you were saying. And when you describe the situation to me, I'm sure it must be so frustrating for you, because you're like, this is just crazy. It's not that hard to be like, these people need, we need homes. Let's do that. But you have all these kind of vested interests, and maybe inertia and all kinds of problems, and it just kind of keeps on going on. However, Elon Musk has taken a big interest again in the UK. And I remember a while back when the grooming gang scandal kicked off again, that Elon Musk became very concerned about that, and was really wanting to push Keir Starmer, whoever, to do more about tending to the grooming gang scandal. And he's back again. And some of you might have seen, I'm sure you probably saw this, this, it seems like talking points went out, and everyone started talking about the rape of Britain, or the rape of Europe. So they've kind of upped their game a bit. It's not about invasion, or for a while there was a lot of talk. I noticed that people wanted to talk about you heard the phrase military age men. They have all these military age men coming into the country, and wanting to have concern about that. But now it's turned to the rape of Britain. And what I wanted to call your attention to again is this idea, making this immigration issue and the broader issue with the housing and the economy and the austerity and all the stuff that's been going on. Probably we could start off in 2008, but I know it goes later, before that, making it about rape. So there's some people that are just really rapey, and we can't let these really rapey people come in. And that has to stop. And you see these statistics coming out about how which nationalities or which ethnicities are raping the most, or are committing are being charged with the most sexual offenses. And I don't want to go to this. I can't see it too much in this picture, but I just people have to be aware that you can make numbers paint all kinds of pictures. So the people that are putting out these statistics want to make it look like people from Sudan, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iran, Iraq, Guinea, along down the line, are just out there just raping all the time. And what you find is that not that there aren't people from these groups who are being charged with sex crimes, but that they present the data in a way that makes it look highly skewed. So, for example, they'll take instead of taking the absolute numbers, they'll say, well, we have this percentage of Sudanese migrants or immigrants have been charged with a sex crime, But what they don't tell you is, or what they try to obscure is like, well, how big is that population group? Yeah. Because if you have 10 people and the population group isn't that big, then then 10 is going to be a much higher percentage of a population group than if you have 10 people from a different from a higher population group. So I'm trying to say is just to be skeptical, even when you see a chart that confirms your bias. Yeah. To look at how they're presenting the data and where it's coming from, to ask what kind of picture are they trying to get you to what kind of story are they trying to tell with the presentation of this data. And another one makes it more clear is that it wasn't just Elon Musk. Of course, he has a huge account. He might have the largest account on Twitter, or X, which isn't a surprise. But Mike Benz, and I don't know if you've heard of him before or not, but I think he's an American, but I first learned of him when he was kind of blowing the whistle on U.S. aid and the kind of the deep state and some of these budgets and how things are going on. How, he's kind of the deep state guy, and focused a lot on U.S. aid and how that works in terms of destabilizing and maybe working counter to the administration's interests overseas. But he posted this as well. The British are not raping themselves. And then again, you have a similar kind of chart where you can see that the people who hardly ever rape at all are the British hardly rape at all. And then you go up, and and then the countries where, as you can imagine, if they're the less European or British they look, and the more likely they are to be Muslim, the more rapey they are. And so I looked at this and I thought I was like, this seems odd to me. And then also you notice that it says source Center for Migration Control, and that sounds like a government agency. I was like, oh, is this the government agency, Center for Migration Control? And then I thought, well, then why would they have data on British there? But then I was like, well, I don't know, And then I looked into it, and it's a think tank. It's a think tank that's very focused, as you can imagine with the name, on reducing immigration. They're very concerned about immigration, and they're related to the Restore Britain project, which is, I think, related to reform. And so I thought it was interesting because this guy has a reputation for being like really analytical, and he gets into the numbers, and he's doing all these, he's one of these guys. It's like, okay, it's almost like that meme when they have the people thinking and they're doing like these difficult equations in their heads. This kind of guy. And I was looking at this and I thought, this is pretty sloppy. For one reason, rape isn't, as we know, isn't the only sexual offense. A sexual offense can range from unwanted touching or peeping or just harassment to rape. Charges aren't convictions. And that this propaganda is from an anti-immigration think tank that gave itself a government-sounding name, Center for Migration Control. If this data is correct, though, however, in absolute terms, you still have more whites or British raping than anybody else because they're the bulk of the population. Yeah. So if you have 6.5, So just again, how you present the data, and that when you look at this, I said, you can always cross-reference it when there's more accurate. I don't, people have reason to be critical of government data, of course. But in the UK, there's the Office for National Statistics, and they reported 24,334 sexual offenses in London for this time period. So even the amount of sexual offenses isn't adding up. But then how they want to present this is charged per 10,000 people. Yeah. And so you have 74 Afghan men apparently were charged with sexual offenses out of 10,000. And so you're like, oh, that's a lot. But if you would, assuming this is true, but then if you were to look at absolute terms in terms of, well, how many people from Afghanistan origin are in the country, then it becomes a smaller number. I mean, the graph could look different. I can make this graph. I could present this information or similar information and have the British, France, and stuff look a lot bigger than smaller as it is now. But what do you make of this switch now to really hyper focus on rape rather than anything else? It's just that this is a rape issue, and we have to control immigration, particularly from Muslim countries or non-Western countries, because if we don't, then you and I and all the women are going to be increasingly in danger of being raped.
Well, I mean, what are the stats for women? Is about 1 in 3, isn't it? If not higher, have experienced it themselves. And we tend to talk to each other, and not everybody shares their experiences, but a lot of people do. So all of us have spoken to friends and sometimes family who have, experienced it themselves. Largely in my experience, it's been somebody that they knew, somebody from within their own community. And you can't know exactly when it might happen to you, or there's no hard and fast way to keep yourself 100% safe. There are measures that you can take, but I think it would be interesting sometimes if people would look at the victims and who is targeted the most, instead of always focusing on the perpetrator and trying to discern some reason, whether it be mental or cultural, for why these things happen. But if we actually thought about who is being targeted, that might actually provide more of an insight into how you could tackle these things. So the way I see it is, the more vulnerable you are to attack, the more likely you are to get predated on, to get attacked. So obviously homeless women, across the board, prostitutes, obviously, but also like people that don't have anyone looking out for them, people that are living chaotic lifestyles, and frequently, the poorer you are, the more likely you are to experience. And that people think that's like victim blaming or something. I don't think so. It's like there are steps that we can take as a society to protect people and make them safer. I don't really think this is a realistic way of going about it.
But also, do you find it curious that Elon Musk and all the and it's a range of people that they've gotten together, and of course it makes sense that they would try to make this a rape story, because the grooming gang scandal is still fresh in people's minds in the UK, I'd imagine. But that of all the stuff that we've talked about that contributes to these factors, them wanting to make immigration about public safety, in particular about rape, I find. It's smart because people have a visceral reaction to that, and you have enough, and obviously, rape happens. People get raped or sexually assaulted. And some of those are going to be committed by immigrants or refugees or whoever. That's, of course, that's going to happen. But I find it really that it's convenient for them to, of course, unsurprisingly, to focus on that part, to make it about rape and to make it about culture and to make it about religion. They use those interchangeably, than about the things that you were talking about earlier on, and of course the economic structures. So, standard of living and changes in the job market, and all the money going to, a lot of the money going to Ukraine, and the crazy electricity costs and all this stuff, all these economic pressures that combine with the demographic ones. And then these incidents happen, and it's easier for people to frame it as in like, see, we just have to take our country back. And what's interesting now is, I think this maybe with the focusing on the rape, I'll see what you think, if this is why they want to focus on the rape aspect. about, you know, this old trope of that we have to protect our women and children from the rapey hordes, is that remigration. So it's not just anymore slowing migration down or getting a better handle, because what's going on between France and from Calais and England seems to be really chaotic and crazy still for all these years. But they want to send people out. They want to kick people out who have been here, and I don't know when the breakoff point is. So is it going to be based on, you know, like skin color and DNA tests? You know, like how much English or Welsh or Scottish blood you have to have in you to make the cut, or if it's just people who don't have citizenship yet. I don't know if anybody has any clarification on that when they say remigration and taking their country back and wanting to get rid of certain groups of people. Have anybody's ever like actually kind of flesh that out a bit, or is it just still just kind of red meat and just throwing it out there? Do you have any idea?
Well, I mean, it's a standard argument that people have used forever. I mean, they could have been talking about Irish people 100 years ago. Absolutely. No morals. They were, you know, drunken, disorderly, dirty, diseased, you know, etc. You feel like you're being threatened by a population. I mean, it's hypocritical as hell, obviously, because a lot of the people that are peddling this, I mean, Elon Musk runs a platform that is used to buy sex, to share images of children and all the rest of it. You know, he could do a lot with his platform to make women and girls safer. He's not interested. You know, Tommy Robinson swept in, you know, after all these women had done, you know, worked half their, you know, for years to try to expose the whole grooming gangs thing. And then he comes in and claims the credit for having exposed it all, brings his thugs in. And what do? They start grooming and assaulting girls, you know? So it's like, you know, the hypocrisy is off the scale. But yeah, it's something that's been used throughout history, I think. And I'm sure if you went back to the Middle Ages or whatever, it would be like, oh, Jews are, you know, marauding and stealing your daughters and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just that we have to invade Afghanistan because of the women, and we have to do a mass remigration campaign because of the women. I mean, you know, everyone's really concerned about poor and working class women.
Yeah, it's great,
and homeless
isn't it?
women
like,
and at-risk women. And then suddenly, you know, it's kind of, it's, you know, it's a late hour, but it kind of reminds me a bit of the abortion debate, and how you have people, not everyone, but the right to life side, and a lot of them seem to be very concerned about the baby until it comes out, and then you're on your own. That was you know, you play, you pay, then you're on your own. But until the baby's out, very concerned about the life. And I think it's, you know, it's just that with this girl in Dundee, or the girls and young women that were trafficked, or, you know, molested or prostituted, or a combination of it by the quote unquote grooming gangs, they're very concerned then, but the living conditions and all the other stuff that contributed to why that was allowed to, you know, why that was allowed to develop and go on as long as it did, those things aren't so interesting. So you see, yeah, again, this is a common trope, perhaps. But I was so it's
the same as like suddenly everybody cares about, you know, sexual assault, etc., when they need an excuse to cancel or character assassinate a male politician, for example. Then it's the worst possible thing. But a lot of the time, I mean, we have actual judges that you know, sit in trials and say, oh well, she was, you know, wearing this kind of clothing, or you know, we don't have a society that particularly takes this stuff seriously, unless there's some other reason, there's some agenda, you know, that it can be applied to.
weaponized. I remember, and I don't know anything about Tara Reid's case, but I remember that everyone that was really hardcore Me Too, any celebrities or people of note or politicians or pundits, when that came out with Joe Biden, no one wanted to, they had no problem impugning her character and not wanting that to go through at all. So yeah. Yeah, it's easy to, yeah, I mean, we're all people, and it's easy to give people we want to give the benefit of the doubt to the benefit of the doubt. Whereas if it's somebody who we are inclined to think the worst of, then every allegation is true. If we like them or we have some sort of interest in it, then like every allegation is false. And it's just a witch hunt or whatever. But in terms of stoking this race war or this clash of civilizations, I don't want to get too much into turf talk, but a lot of women who I came to know, first of all, from like Let Women Speak and standing up against the gender ideology madness, have pivoted to now their focus isn't so much only on men, not, on single sex spaces and how, women don't have penises, et cetera, et cetera. You have DJ Lippy, who will post, and she's not the only one, but anything crazy about Islam or Muslims, they will post. And there's no fact checking. So Jill Foster really has, apparently she has an ear on the ground in Afghanistan, because she's constantly putting out all these crazy things that are going on in Afghanistan. And she wrote, women and girls are not even pulled out of the earthquake rubble in Afghanistan because men won't touch them and male doctors won't treat them. So, and DJ Lippy replies or reposts this, am I racist because I don't want to live next door to men like this? And I find this really interesting, is that, do they really believe that women and girls in Afghanistan, that a male doctor won't touch them or treat them? Apparently.
I mean, this stuff is really being pushed, isn't it? It's. I wonder what.
Well, let's say there's this concerted thing, and it's just like, and it doesn't even matter. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of, again, of course, if you're online or I mean, we're just social, so you kind of can pick up on the lingo. But you notice all of a sudden, like, oh, these are the talking points, and like somehow it went out, and everyone starts using these same phrases.
But who? I mean, does somebody want us to go? Does someone want us to invade Afghanistan again? Is this what this is all leading up to? Are we supposed to go back in and destroy the country?
Well, no, I think they're using this as for why we don't want the people to come. We don't want these people.
Oh, no, I know that. Yeah. But I mean, it's not coming from DJ Lippy, is it? Like, there's obviously something being orchestrated at a much higher level, or a much, darker sort of secretive sort of level.
I mean, are they going to do like, Afghanistan 3.0
yeah.
or 4.0?
It's Iran or Afghanistan, always. Obviously, Israel is always let off the hook, no matter what goes on there. But also Saudi, no one ever seems to talk about what happens in Saudi Arabia. It's like specifically Afghanistan and Iran. But isn't it convenient that those are like kind of like the enemies of Western imperialism, essentially? Like, what is going on here? Do they remember? I mean, these are people that were adults when we invaded Afghanistan. We killed millions of people, and we just, the mass rapes that went on. Like, did they not, were they completely unaware? Were they just not watching the news for 10, 15 years? Like, we utterly demolished that country. Women couldn't get water. They couldn't get clean water. There was no electricity for more than half the country. The kids couldn't go to school at all. Like, that wasn't the Taliban that did that. We did that with our tax money, we funded that. And we all marched in our hundreds and thousands against it, and it obviously made no difference. But where were they? Were they had their head buried in the sand when this was going on?
Yeah, I was also thinking about that too, but then I thought, well, the US has so much, they're so busy with the proxy war in Ukraine and with their Greater Israel project, and now they're trying to make Venezuela into a cartel state or something. I'm thinking, are they gonna circle back and try Afghanistan again because there's rare earth metals in the mountains? I don't know, but yeah, I just find it all very suspicious and sad. It's like, are you itching for a race war? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Like, who benefits from this?
Well, some of them are getting paid.
Well, I mean, that's a stupid question. Some people benefit from it, but I just want to tell her, like, no one's coming. They're not coming to rape you, so calm down. I mean, not that she can't, shit could happen. But this idea that they think there's some sort of plan involved to, I don't know, adopt Sharia law in the UK or something, and put burqas on all of us.
Do they think all the problems that women face in the UK are the direct result of government policy? Do they think that somebody in a room somewhere decided, oh, we want X many women to get raped and we want this many women to get paid half of what a man would, and or are there other things? Is society maybe complex and made up of people, and there's other factors at play? Because it's the same in Afghanistan. It's not like, not only did we tear that country apart, and I say we, obviously we weren't, in favor of it, but I say we because it's the money came from us. That was our money that could have been spent on improving lives, for example, for women and girls, and instead we spent it on blowing up countries and destroying them for decades to come. Why? Because there was economic interests to further there. So none of this was done in our names. It was not done in the names of women of Afghanistan, just like the Gulf War and the war in Iraq had nothing to do with liberating people from a nasty dictatorship. It's absolute nonsense. And I'm sure these people, at least at one point, would have been like, yeah, they would have accepted that. They would have known that we were being lied to and used and all the rest of it. But when it's Afghanistan and a horrible thing happens, and I'm not denying that horrible things happen to women in Afghanistan. Obviously, you see stories and it makes you sick. But like, they just think, right, that's either because they're all terrible men and they have terrible culture, or because their government has decreed it, and the government is all powerful and everything that they do immediately gets enacted. And that's why I thought it would have been really interesting if we could have got a chance to, if you could have got a chance to interview Yvonne Ridley, because her whole story that she was abducted by the Taliban many years ago, ended up becoming this, like, fervent anti-war campaigner, and because she's always been so outspoken about UK and US imperialism, she went and visited a year ago, or just under a year ago, and the Taliban roll out the red carpet for her, and she gets unprecedented access to people as a woman that is kind of unthought of. And she got to sit down with cabinet members, and she spoke to the education secretary, for instance. And the way she described it to me was, she was like, I sat down and I took him to task on this. I was like, what the hell is going on? Why can't women, why can't women and girls get an education? What's happening here? And what he said to her was basically like, we don't like this. We're not happy about this. These are people that want their daughters to be educated, to have an opportunity to become doctors, nurses, etc. But they're caught between the tensions of different groups within the country. So there's a lot of sort of tribal leaders and religious leaders and stuff that they have to come up against and that they can't control. So they're caught in a vice to a large extent. So it's not as simple as just every man is bad and they all have these ideas, nor is it as simple as the Taliban has decreed that women can't be educated. These are complex societies. It's like as complex
And
as
my guess is that the bad feelings or the upsettedness that people outside of that country, especially that have very little understanding of it, feel about these stories that we're fed, has no bearing on what's going on there. So this
yeah.
idea that if we could just get people to care enough about it, that somehow that in and of itself is going to make a difference, is just kind of silly. And also it's just that, again, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that people have this idea that like the Taliban's in every nook and cranny, or the Taliban, everyone who's a member of the Taliban is the same, like they're the Borg or something. And it's just that, to me, it's just that, there's certain things that are crappy. You just have to accept it. It's at the end of the day, that society, that community, that polity has to sort it out. And that sanctioning and wars and saying is and trying to make it like you got to rescue these women from their culture and their men and their religion is, how is
And
that
we
going to
did.
work? Because they can't come to these places. It's just fairy tale and whimsy, and
And we heard those arguments
ignorant.
before we went in. They were
Yeah.
like, look how they treat their women. Oh, look, their women have to cover their
Mhm.
faces, blah, blah. How terrible is that? How much happier will they be when we bomb them to shreds?
Mhm. Mhm.
Clearly these women would rather be bombed and killed en masse than have to live a moment longer under this terrible patriarchal structure. It's like,
Yeah.
and there's also this idea that between the bombing and destruction and mass rape that
Mhm.
happened, and the Taliban taking
Mhm.
control again, that those years were great,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and that women had total freedom and
Mhm.
everything was great.
Mhm.
Like, the Afghan women's football team has been touring, playing matches and that, and there's been a lot of like chat about that. Well, another thing that Yvonne really told me was that during that period before before the
Mhm.
Taliban coming back, that she spoke. I thought it was a coach for the team or something, or was it an ex-player? Was saying that
Mhm.
all of them had been sexually assaulted at one point or another by coaches or by other men.
Mhm.
Like this stuff was going on before the
Mhm.
Taliban regained control. So
Mhm.
it's not as simple as
Mhm.
the idea. Yeah, the idea that Western powers can come back in and sort this out somehow, or
Mhm.
that Western women have a clue what needs to be done on the ground
Mhm.
to improve the situation,
Mhm.
is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, we've
Well,
done enough.
and to put a fine point on this is that the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, the stories that we're told about, especially I'm coming from being an American, about why we have to go, oh well, someone has to be the police and this and that, and um to be like that, you need to look at the economic reasons, the geopolitical reasons for why the US goes into where it goes, and usually it's always because there's some resource they want. So it's something to do with the economy. So there's some resource they want to access, or they want to control the access of, and any group there who is getting ideas that they can decide themselves their economic and foreign policies will find themselves all of a sudden called the terrorist, or you have some sort of crazy ISIS group roaming around in your country. There's some pretext for them to be able to go from economic sanctions or pressure to military pressure. So in the Middle East, it's easy because it's the oil and the gas and the trading routes and whatnot. That it's not a surprise why Saudi Arabia and the United States at the government at the elite level are such good friends. You know? And that it's the same thing to keep in mind with not to go too much into Gaza and Israel before we get into Graham, but that the Greater Israel Project is a Western imperialist project. They want to have that beachhead or that local hegemon in that area that can do their bidding, and so they support it. And we're told it's because of the Holocaust, or because the Jews need at least one state, or we're told all kinds of things, which some people may believe, or there's right things. But in terms of why the powers that be, or why the establishment in the UK or the EU or the United States supports Israel is about the location of Israel more than anything else. And being able to use that pretext of Israel defending itself to go into Syria if you want, to go into Egypt if you want, to go into Jordan if you want, to go into Lebanon if you want, because Israel has to defend itself. It just happens to coincide sometimes enough with American geopolitical interests and Western interests in that region more broadly. So, or maybe they just really care about the women. I guess that's also possible.
Yeah, I guess it could be that.
and combating anti-Semitism. I guess it could be it.
Because that's how the world works.
C'est possible.
I mean, we never learn. We just never learn. It is always women that end up getting used, isn't it? I mean, I remember this from when they were drumming up support for the wars in Afghanistan, for the invasion of Afghanistan, and then in Iraq. It's for the poor Kurds. That was the other one. Great. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, they got justice, didn't they? Or it was for the poor women, and it's messed up. It's yeah, and the left is
falling for it.
The left is no better for it, because the left's answer is just I remember during the Arab Spring, various left-wing men telling me that women were at the forefront of like the Egyptian revolution, and that like everything was going to be equal from now on and stuff. And I'm like, it's you don't think that, do you? Like, I mean, great, but there are lots of people like lawyers, activists, people that are setting up charities or do various kind of good works to, try to improve the situation for women and girls in every country. And yeah, they should be supported. But the idea that the interests of Western imperialism are to make things nice for women, come on.
Well, and also the fact that we tend to live together as guys and gals, and that oftentimes what's kind of universal or good programs that will help women or that will help men and boys also are good for women and girls. So obviously with some differences, I'm not an idiot,
access
but
to water,
just that, water and
the ability to stay alive.
Yeah, all that type of stuff tends to help take the pressure off the sexual politics and relations.
Yeah, living in a house rather than a field of tents.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's not just this is Dutch. It's not just England that's taking their country back. We are generation remigration. So I'm not sure where everyone's going to remigrate to or how they're going to set that up, but this is something that is that isn't going to be settled by just saying, oh, that's not good and racist and this type of stuff, that this is growing and you have a lot of fissures and contradictions and anxiety and immiseration, and people need to make some sort of sense about why that is and what can be done about it. And you can't combat this with just saying, oh, they just have to be more open and have to be more that. It's like, no, jobs matter. Opportunity matters, all these things, but generation remigration. So I guess my guess is it would be a color line about who they want to remigrate or not, but we don't get a lot of specifics. Anyway, anything else on this? Oh, so the England the Patriots, the sons of the soil, the sons and daughters of the soil aren't the only ones that want their country back. So I'll let you go ahead and tell me what this picture's about, or not?
Yeah,
the audience, just me, Laura.
This was a very weird day that we went that we got kind of played by the media because we had a leak from a editor of a newspaper that told us that Farage was going to be in Hamilton as part of the campaign for the by-election there. They didn't get in. It was Labour in the end. But we went up, and I made this banner and found these Richard Tice quotes, basically, where they're saying, like, we want Scotland's oil and gas, and they owe us, what was it? It was like £50 million or something that they decided that Scotland owes England, and it's ridiculous stuff. And I thought it was a nice play on the whole, we want our country back. And it was like, now can we have our country back? Because you keep stealing all our natural resources, shutting down all our industry, shipping all the jobs down south, So like, actual Scottish people would like their own country so that we can, build something better. Anyway, so we went up to yell at Farage, who never even turned up in the end. And it turned out that Keir Starmer was also visiting, and he was at BAE Systems that day announcing a whole load of military spending. So this was a total diversion. Essentially, we were working for the Labour Party that day without even realizing. So we were very annoyed when we realized that. But it was weird because they'd obviously leaked this top secret information to various groups, including the Scottish Socialist Party and Stand Up to Racism, who were there with their banners and stuff. And we got some kind of like slightly snooty sort of comments from some of the socialists there. I mean, they generally, convivial and were on the same side kind of thing. But the flag already at that point was getting people's heckles up. And they're like, oh, what's with the saltire? And I was like, I mean, I thought it was pretty self-explanatory if you read the banner, like what we were getting at. We want our country back, as in Scotland, from the English, as opposed to from the evil immigrants. And I had this woman who was like, oh, what's your banner about? And I said, Scottish independence. And she goes, oh, well, I'm also in favor of Scottish independence, but I want a Scottish Socialist Republic. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, why should the presence of the saltire mean anything else, But basically the left has been so about flags. Even the Scottish flag and the basically the Scottish independence movement has been so crap for the last 13 years and ground down by the likes of Nicola Sturgeon, that they couldn't see the saltire as a symbol of freedom and independence. For them it was just another flag, and flags are bad, it should be avoided. And I thought that was really strange, especially for
not every flag. Okay.
Well, it's weird now because like they're going up all over my neighborhood and I can't join in because it's not an independence thing. It's we don't want the nasty migrants here kind of thing. And it's not maybe
you know what you need to do, Laura. You know what you need to do? You need to take your flag back.
Yes. Well, this is what I've been warning people on the left, because basically the left in Scotland is pro-independence. They all voted yes in the referendum. They all wanted it. They all still want it, but they don't see it as the top priority. They think there's other things that are more important. I see it as we can't do anything until we get away from Westminster, until we get out of Britain, until we destroy Britain. That's the whole point. We need to tear apart the British imperial state.
Politically, by the way, politically, she means, yeah. Okay.
Yes, yeah. I don't mean we want to go
be careful these days.
But the left let go of that, and I think it's all been a very deliberate, concerted effort to crush resistance and all the rest of it. But the fact that the left got so cringe about the Scottish flag has meant that their lot, if you want to call, the racists, have now reclaimed it, and it's theirs. It's their flag, and that angers me. That makes me really angry, because the Scottish flag back during the 2014 referendum represented a desire for a country that wasn't warmongering. It was against Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was pro-refugee, and it was like, we're better. We could have like a more left-leaning, more progressive government up here if we just got to vote for the government that we wanted. And now here we are, however many years later, and it's been claimed by Reform, you're the likes of them, you know. And so we had that day you had a bunch of people like yelling about racism, standing behind a banner saying we welcome refugees or something like that. Refugees are welcome here. And people started heckling.
In a lovely hotel right over here. We welcome you, welcome our refugees to a lovely hotel. Just, you know, don't mind all the you know, all the crime and the deprivation. We welcome you to our fine hotel. Yes, sorry.
Well, they ended up getting heckled, right? By just, you know, random passersby, like, oh, you know, go to Palestine and see how you like it, or something like that, and like, oh, what about Scottish people, like, you know, the usual kind of stuff. And what do the, you know, anti-racism demonstrators do? They start screaming back, because that's what you do. So we end up like there's this bizarre shouting match going on between the pro-refugee people that are there to protest Farage, who never turned up. He never came. He was in a pub like down the road, like completely unaware of any of this. But we ended up with like a sizable group of just, you know, normal working class people on the street yelling at these protesters, and it all got a bit heated. And because Farage hadn't actually turned up, the poor reporters had nothing else to film other than these altercations happening between people. And it was just, it was embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. I think, if anything, they probably won Reform a few votes that day with that behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like, these people were like, well, maybe I will vote for Reform. And anyway, it was Labour that got in. But it was a weird sort of media circus, and we were all being played. And but yeah, the main thing was that this message just isn't generally cutting through. The idea that like we could have a better society, you know, what about having our own country, one that, you know, is fairer and puts the needs of people before profit, and that we could stop them from asset stripping us and taking all our resources. The left isn't interested in stuff like that. They just want to stand outside a building and scream at normal people going about their daily life and call them racist. And it's like, oh, I don't know where we go from here. We keep trying.
One time it'll work for them. Yeah. No, but I also think this is interesting that the Scotland owes us some money. We get the oil and gas, and it's so funny. It's like, if Scotland was being subsidized by England, then why would they want their independence?
And why would they want to keep us so badly?
Yeah, it's kind of like they give the game away there a bit. All right. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, before I run totally out of steam. Yeah, I want to put this up there as a transfer point between this and going on to Graham. Nina Power is lovely. She's a philosopher. She's been canceled twice for her gender critical views and various things. But she posted this the other day. Nothing is perfect, but is it really beyond the collective wit and ken of humanity to make life livable for people in their homelands? We are told that people do not readily want to leave their families and traditions. Surely with today's tech, many countries can be rebuilt and thrive. And I said, well, we seem to be skipping some steps here because you would have to have the political battle to set up to get this level of redistribution, to be able to distribute that and get it where it needs to go and build it up. And and fair enough. She was and she wrote back, well, people aren't systems, and you need to focus on taking care of people. And I said, yeah, this is true, but to get to what you're proposing, you would need to have a system that would support that, and that we don't get there by whimsy and wonderment or wonderings, but you have to fight it out. You have to attain it politically and then hash it out. But fair enough. I think that this is also, I think that for the most people, I think they would agree with this, that most people, there's some people who want to travel and they like, they get the wanderlust or whatever. But I don't think that's a bizarre statement or a necessarily conservative statement to say that most people would like to stay in the country that they were born and raised in, if possible. And instead of, so again, but philosophers are good at this. They're good at saying things, and there's enough wiggle room that they don't put a lot of meat in the bones. You're kind of like, oh, that sounds nice, I just thought that, and she's trying to maybe, tone, kind of take the temperature down a bit, perhaps, with these types of ideas, or just what's the word? Assessments, interventions. There you go. Okay, so oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So let's quite quickly. How's your energy level, Laura? You all right?
I'm flagging a wee bit, but I've got
me too. Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm just going through my stuff here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Graham Lineham, Lineham. Is that how you say it? Linehan. Okay. Linehan. So, he is known in the UK. He might be known now also in the United States, because he's been over there for a while doing writing a comedy. I don't know, working on a show with Rod Schneider, I think, and some other people who got mad at the cancel culture in the UK. But anyway, he came back to England. Was it a week ago, maybe, or 4 days ago? I can't remember now. 4 or 5 days ago. And he was arrested for, I don't know, 3 or 4 tweets that were considered anti-trans, or I guess the police must have decided they were possibly counting as hate speech, an ill-defined term. And since then, I made this meme because it kind of solidified, kind of captured the debate, at least online, and it's the classic Drake meme. And so on the one hand, you have there's people who are really pissed off and incensed that Graham Lineham was arrested for these anti-trans tweets, in quotes. But these same people then who are very upset about this have no problem at all, and are quite happy when the government prescribes Palestine action and drags citizens, including senior citizens who are peacefully protesting this move, off to jail. Or you have the reverse. The people who are very upset. You also have a group that's very upset, rightly, with about the government prescribing Palestine action and dragging off and arresting people who are peacefully protesting this, but are quite fine with because they believe in something called transphobia, and they're fine. They're like, transphobia can't be tolerated, and Graham Lineham is a bigot, and this, that, and the other, and so they're A-okay with him being detained at the Heathrow by 4 or 5 police officers for some tweets, and that's kind of the status of the debate. If you can, because you probably know, and so because I'd have to read the Guardian article that was fairly fair, I have to say, compared to what would have been a year or 2 ago. But just for people who don't know anything about who he is, do you know enough to kind of take us from Father Ted to the present?
Yeah, I mean,
please take it away, Laura.
He's a really big deal. I mean, you live in the UK, right?
Maybe.
So you must have. Right. But I mean, he's
sometimes
a really big
I
deal.
do.
All the top comedy sitcoms, basically, of the last 20 years, he wrote them. Black Books, The IT Crowd. But yeah, Father Ted was the one that I think launched his career. Mm-hmm. And he breaks my heart. I love.
We'll get there. But first,
I love Father Ted. The story of 2 useless priests living on an island, in the middle of nowhere. And it was hilarious, and especially as an Irish expat, it was something that kind of I could watch that and feel a little bit connected to home kind of thing. And like, yeah, really, really funny guy, great writer, produced so much brilliant TV. Back in the day, like stood up for, because abortion was illegal in Ireland until very recently. He was part of the abortion campaign in Ireland. Him and his then partner spoke out about their own very personal, painful experiences that they didn't have to. And, you know, so, you know, all around good guy as far as I was concerned. He had I think originally it was an episode of the IT Crowd, which you should watch because it's absolutely hilarious and doesn't really have anything in it that anyone could consider transphobic, because it's actually a fairly sympathetic portrayal of a trans woman, played, I think, by a woman. And it's like the horrible boss basically goes out with this trans woman, doesn't realize she's trans because he mishears, what was it? He mishears, I used to be a man as I'm from Iran or something like that. So he's like, oh, I'm fine with that. I'm totally progressive.
I'm culturally cool. Yeah.
And like he comes out at the end and they have this hilarious like fist fight. But it's brilliant. And I think it was around, I don't know if it was that specifically, but like, because I know he's talked about, because basically he ended up getting cancelled big time for you know, offhand comment about, you know, trans stuff or making a joke or whatever, got challenged about it, started questioning stuff, and then like, you know, got hounded, and like, you know, they came down on him like a ton of bricks, and he started questioning it all and going, well, no, hang on, this is a really weird, you know, social and cultural phenomenon that's going on. Wait, now we're expected to actually pretend that men who are trans identified are literally female? Like, this is nuts. Looked into the whole, like, you know, lesbian dating apps thing, and how, like, you know, lesbians are now expected to date men wearing lipstick, and you know, how all their websites are just completely taken over by these guys. You know, just basically really started looking into it and the effects that it was having on women and women's rights and stuff. Started writing about it. Got his, like, so he had the Father Ted, this is years and years after Father Ted came out, but he was writing a musical based on it, so Father Ted the musical, and it was all ready to go. And it was, you know, basically the way he puts it, was going to be his retirement kind of package sort of thing. And then the producers like cancelled it. Not only cancelled it, but they wouldn't release the you know, the script or whatever, so he couldn't produce it with anyone else. So they kind of like held it hostage, so he's never been able to actually make the thing or put it on. And so he had his career destroyed because he was writing, you know, transphobic stuff online. Had the police sent to his house countless times. Eventually, I'm not completely sure the details, but I think his wife got fed up and was like, look,
his marriage ended during this time.
This isn't my fight. I don't want to have to do this. So he lost his marriage. So his career, you know, his like financial situation.
Yeah, he became like persona non grata. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really, really nasty. Like, you know, people went from, you know, he went from a kind of national treasure kind of thing to just this absolute pariah. And then he set up this YouTube show called The Mess We're In, with oh dear, I'm terrible.
Heather Strandland or something?
Yes,
Morty something.
Helen Stanisland, sorry. R.C. Morsi. Originally, they had this detransitioner woman on called Benji, who was great. And yeah, so the three of them, but then they'd have guests on. They had like all the big kind of turfs that were around, like, you know, 10 years ago, went on this show. He tried to give a platform to like loads of people, including people that were, you know, not famous, but had been cancelled, you know, by their communities, or, you know, like people in their professional sphere. So he did a lot of good work on this.
No, I mean, it cost him. I mean, I think it's not overstated to say that him taking a stand against the kind of the gender borg, as I like to call it, Although I wasn't aware, I didn't become aware of how crazy things were until 2020. But 2018, but between that, he literally lost almost everything, including his marriage, his reputation, jobs, money, was getting, all types of stuff. So it was really amazing, like Jesus, because a lot of people have done a mea culpa and struggle session and after receiving a lot less pressure, but he did not give in. He stood his ground and said, no, this transgender business is misogynistic, it's homophobic, it's a huge regression for women's rights, and he was, he wasn't going to back down. And he also was, I think, didn't he also get a lot of kind of the civility police people like, well, I agree with you, but the way you're saying it and you're too direct and this and that. And yeah, as time goes on, I'm sure like we all do, we get a bit more, direct.
He was always direct in a way that I guess you're just not allowed to be anymore. But I mean, okay, there maybe sometimes he worded things differently to how I would, but he never crossed that line as far as I'm concerned into like hate speech.
Well, and I haven't gone through and looked at all, I haven't done
I haven't read every single thing he ever wrote, but I mean,
but I was like, dude,
at the end of the day.
Yeah,
so he's like, not going to be all, demure and about everything. But but he had this show. It was running for years. It platformed so many people. I mean, we got cancelled from our tenants union, and we were desperate to go. We were like, maybe we can go on the mess we're in and tell our story about our tiny union and like stuff. But we did send him a story, and he did say that he would put it up on his Substack thing, and like he's a very busy guy, but he was nice enough to respond to us. I met him in person at like the Let Women Speak event in Glasgow a couple of years ago. I only chatted to him very briefly, but he was very nice. He was always very personable to anyone that approached him. I really, really, really liked Graham. I did a lot.
So thank you. And so a few days ago, this is him from yesterday or the day before. He had to come back to the United States because he had a court date. It wasn't for these tweets, but it was trans related. Some I don't know, some trans woman or who's well, you know what I mean. A man who identifies as trans was suing him, or there was some case going on.
For scratching his phone.
For scratching his phone, is that what it is?
Yeah, literally.
Damage of property.
After he'd been shoving it in his face at various events throughout the day and following him around from place to place, he eventually grabbed his phone off him and threw it on the ground. And that's
that was the case. And that goes to court? Jeez.
Apparently.
Okay. So he comes out, and he's from being arrested at Heathrow with 4 or 5 officers about some questionable tweets. So he comes out of the courtroom, and he's wearing a placard, and it says there's no such thing as a transgender child. And then he turns it around. The other side says something about no men and women's spaces or something about that. Women's sports. Okay. So this, so far so good. But the problem that some of us are having is that after October 7th, he is one of these people. He has a yellow ribbon in his thing, and he just sounds like Bibi Netanyahu, or like Smotrich. He, is just swallowed that whole, and no matter what someone tries to, when people would try to be like, whoa, he just isn't having it. You're a Hamas lover. You're terrible. You're a terrorist. You're, this, that, the other. He is full on what we would call a Zionist, or a Zionist rights activist. What we used to call the TRAs, the trans rights activists, who are the trans women or women, no debate, and just throw out all kinds of, bunk and everything that the TERFs or the people who are critical of gender ideology were pulling their hair out over, trying to engage with these TRAs. the ZRAs do in spades. So Zionist rights activists. And so just to mock this a bit, because he's been being touted now as like this, this paragon of free speech. And he's really, he's kind of a martyr for the cause and whatnot, and didn't back down. And of course, when it comes on that, and I would first say that, yeah, it's total bullshit. All these charges with these tweets and stuff, it's ridiculous. That you can't say that if a quote unquote trans woman is in the women's bathroom, here's what you can do if they won't leave, and that gets you met with 4 or 5 police officers at the airport. But I made I did a meme of this, and I put on his placard, "There's no such thing as a Palestinian child," and you may think that's. I'm not saying like you, but you may as well, or people in general might think that's harsh. But he literally, he's off the reservation when it comes to Israel-Palestine. Just has done it. And what's interesting is, interesting might be the wrong word, is that, so he'll say things like, with Nas Bob, I think she's, I can't remember, but I think this person is a British, well, she's a lesbian and British, but she's also part Palestinian or something like that. And she was trying to have a conversation with him, and he just wasn't having it. No matter what she said, he was like, "No, you're pro-rape and murder of civilians as long as they're Jews. Shame on you both." Okay. And then Asa Winstanley, who's from, I think he's British. He writes for Electronic Intifada, and he posted something when Israeli bombed the aid ship that Greta Thunberg was due to board with drones, and it's not even a news story. And Graham Lineham now, this is the Graham Lineham with the red, he's now a yellow ribbon, responds to him, "Who cares? Fuck you and fuck her. Also, what happened to climate change? Is that not a problem now?" Okay. And I didn't go through because, again, I really, I also was really impressed with him and really admired what he was willing to, all the shit he would take to have integrity on this issue. And so when he was one of the harder ones to see go totally Zionist, just totally like he took the IDF tour and just swallowed it whole. I mean, it's interesting to see, especially because here's a tweet from Graham in 2018, and he's responding to somebody who was saying something about something about Palestinians, and he mentioned Rachel Corrie, who was killed by the IDF, I think in 2002 or 2003. She was in Gaza the Gaza to the West Bank protesting settlements or something. And he responds to somebody, "Rachel Corrie might disagree, or those that executed on the flotilla trying to bring Gaza aid, or those kids playing football on a beach, or these kids, stop using whataboutery to defend the indefensible." So he has gone from this to the complete other side on this issue. And why that is, I don't know. But people have noticed because, again, with him trying to be, him being set up as this kind of martyr for free speech, whereas the same people there, and they don't consider what's happening to people who are being arrested or canceled or hounded for being critical of Israel and their government's support of it. They're fine with that. That's different. And I listened to Posey Parker's Turf Talk, or the thing she had on Tuesday, and they were going on and on about how terrible this is, and she made a point of saying, "I don't even want to hear any comparison with Palestine Action or any of that. That's 3,000 miles away, and there's Jewish people who are afraid to come out of their house. That's a totally different thing." No, it's not a different thing. It's not a different thing at all. Anyway, anything you want to say about the transformation of Graham Lineham on this issue? Besides, it's just upsetting.
I mean, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I don't know whether I would rather that this was a completely mercenary sort of, decision that he's made for the sake of his pension fund, like that he's realized, like, you know, that
I
in
can't
order
do this again.
to get his Rob Schneider vehicle sitcom, that this is the price he needs to pay, or that he actually genuinely believes this stuff. I suspect it's the latter. I think he genuinely has changed his opinion. Or, I mean, you know, the way people can kind of believe the thing that is most you know, useful for them to believe. So maybe there's something like that going on in his head where he's like, oh, this is the thing that will lead to better career prospects. So now I believe this. Like, he doesn't.
I tend to think it's the latter too, because he wouldn't have to go so hard in the paint if it was just like, I don't want to, like, I've been told, like, he was totally cast out of all his groups over the gender stuff. And a lot of people, I'm sure, you know, the Constantine Kissins and maybe Douglas Murray, I don't know who he's palling around with, but a lot of the people who I guess I could see not wanting to put my head above the parapet on this issue because I went through this crap, but he's just not kind of, you know, it's not just not saying anything or maybe saying I stand with Israel. He goes hard in the paint. So this is from September 4th, or maybe there was a few days ago where a lady in Germany was like really beaten by the police she was a reporter, I think, and during during a protest, a pro-Palestinian or opposed to genocide protest in Berlin. And there's a picture of her just really being like, she got a black eye and a bloody nose. I mean, she was beaten by the police. Yeah. And he retweets this. Graham Lineham retweets this. ZZ Flop says, Irish journalists will congregate at the Garden of Remembrance this evening for a wreath-laying ceremony to mark 48 hours since Kitty O'Brien's nosebleed in Germany.
Wow.
So it's the vigor, and yeah, I mean, dealing with him is like you think you're dealing with someone who's being paid to do it in a dusty office in Ashkelon or something. He's hardcore. So it's human shields, it's Hamas tunnels, it's release the hostages, it's 40 beheaded babies, mass rape, all that stuff. And he will not listen to anybody tell him anything at all. And what's really odd about that is, but you go back to 2018 and he was in a totally different position. He could have empathy at least.
But did you see him on Josh Rogan or Joe Rogan's thing where he was like, he asked him about it and he was like, oh, I don't want to comment on that. I'm involved in too many, arguments as it is. I couldn't possibly go there.
Well, that was like, smart then. Well, that's a large platform, yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's like
maybe he was. I mean, I don't know. To be honest, I didn't watch his Joe Rogan because again, I didn't want to hear. I figured there'd be some of that, and Joe Rogan is kind of, you know,
he challenged him. He challenged him, but Glinner just was like, "Oh no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about that because it's contentious."
Because I can't. Because I'm not going to call you a Hamas lover.
Exactly. So yeah, that was interesting. He reverted to cuddly, Glinner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to wrap this up, because Dr. Helen I always call her Helen, so bad. Heather Brunskill Evans. She's a tag to Against Genocide, and she was arrested. She took part in the protest against the prescription of Palestine action. So there was a group of people who were just sitting as a group, just with signs, and they were, terrorists and had to be taken away. But she wrote about this after Glinner's arrest, and he was going to be at the courthouse yesterday. So she writes, I send support to @Glinner today, which is his Twitter handle, for his appearance at Westminster Magistrates Court. He will have a big crowd who will all cheer on, rightly, his right to free speech. I also hugely support those from Defend Our Juries who will also appear at that same court today, who will be sentenced for speaking out against Israeli breaking international law, aided by the UK, and killing thousands of Palestinian children and women. I wonder whether Graham's supporters will apply the same principle to these defendants and cheer them on too, or whether they will only believe in free speech for those whose ideas they agree with. Once my friends, will they come to give me support when I appear on the court on October 13th, charged with supporting terrorism? So again, she's had to part ways with people because there's been a division in the TERFs, of course, between what I call the PERFs, Palestinian excluding radical feminists or femalists, and tags, TERFs against genocide. And Heather is a tag. And so she has been, they have no tolerance for her because, of course, she's a Hamas lover and terrorist supporter, et cetera, et cetera. I'm talking in their phrase now, not mine. And she continues because someone brought to her attention his comment about the reporter being beaten 2 days ago, I think it was. So then she responds, I'm utterly horrified by Graham and his crude, morally depraved response to male violence enacted by the state. If he should even think of endorsing this misogyny that demeans the seriousness of the police punching a woman in the face, demonstrates that his concern for violence against women and girls concerns only some women. This is the great thing about free speech. In the end, it reveals what people really think. The gender-critical feminists supporting him today and having a party at the magistrate's court did not object to the police brutality against this woman either. The point is that the police should not be arresting Glinner, nor should they be arresting me. In a liberal democracy, we should both be free to express our views without being put in cells. That Glinner won't be defending me, but that I defend him, points to the state of the gender-critical movement as a whole, with which I'm also horrified. Let it all emerge in the wash of free speech. That's what I say. So, voice of wisdom. But anyway, here's the lady, and there's a video. This is Kitty O'Brien, and there's a video also online of. I mean, I was like, Jesus. I mean, you know, she was given it because. But anyway, so she posted this today. Was brutalized by the Berlin police. Let me remove my little thingamajig so we can see it. Brutalized by Berlin police last week. Posted this message today on Instagram. Kitty is an inspiration. We are not afraid of the cops. Our movement grows stronger. All eyes on Gaza, and donate to help Kitty recover here. So you can see the black eye and whatnot. And I looked at the video, and I don't know if you saw the video, but it was intense.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like, is she armed? it was, and that is the joke about that they're going to gather and remember her nosebleed today. Yeah.
Yeah. Very weird.
So it's just, yeah. So that's the thing about the martyr Ted. I was making a joke about it because it was a wash, and these the just kind of one-sidedness of it, you know. And of course, it's easier said than done. But the realization that, you know, what the powers that be don't like one day can switch the next day, which they should realize. Yeah. So and it's also it's very difficult because on one hand, I'm glad that that the tide's been turning, because it used to be that if someone was arrested for a tweet like this, that there would be pushback and it wouldn't be as much. And even the Guardian is softening up on their tone of the gender critical so much. So normally I'd want to be like, well, this is great, you know, like fuck this, this bullshit. But since he's been so vile, I mean, just really vile when it comes to the Palestinian issue, it's just like, this is the hypocrisy, you know. And they want to make a point like, no, this is a violation of free speech and democratic rights, but all the stuff that's happening, those people that are critical of Israel and our government's participation, fuck that. That has nothing to do with it. They deserve it. That's different. It's like, okay. So I had to mock that a bit just with Martyr Ted. Father Ted has become Martyr Ted. And when it comes to the gender stuff, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, it's just really, I don't know what to make of it. But I too would be, at first I thought, well, maybe it's just, he was burned by that. And it's just, is he really going to do, now that it's kind of coming out the other side of this gender stuff and his career, and he's starting to get, back into some financial stability and getting some jobs in the States. Does he really want to, so I could see if he would kind of stick out of it, or just kind of be one of those people that you have really no idea what their point of it is. But to be so passionately pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, making, he's engaged in straight up genocide denial and apologia. I don't know what else to call it.
I mean, if it's genuine, which it does, I would be inclined to think that with him it is genuine. I mean, it's infuriating, and it's like watching the same mad groupthink stuff that was going on with all these trans rights activists a few years ago. It's just like watching that all play out again with the very same people that were supposedly like free thinkers and critical thinkers and able to see through it all. But if it's genuine, I think it does come down to the rape hoax, Hasbara propaganda after October the 7th. I think that is what has done a number on the feminist and gender critical movement. They bought into that, and people are still struggling now to say that was a lie. You were lied to. And maybe it's worth like doing a real deep dive into that at some point. As some people obviously have done, but I think even people that are outspoken about the genocide and who are criticizing Israel have tended to steer away from that because they are afraid of getting tarred with that brush. And I think that's largely where it came from, and they had that ready to go. That was like well orchestrated, hugely well funded.
It was from the
absolutely from the get-go. They had that ready to go well before.
And who wants to? I also don't like saying rape hoax. I also, but it's just like,
it's a very powerful argument.
But it's also the fact that
it was.
I just want to circle back how again you see how this gets utilized, or how this weaponization and manipulation based on women and children.
Yeah.
On one side, I mean, it's very strategic. It's very unevenly deployed.
It was used to justify the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and it was used back in the First World War. They had the Belgian nuns. Nasty Germans marauding and mass rape of nuns. Again, never happened, but it was used as a justification for people getting involved in that war. So this is it's time and time again this has been used, but I mean it's been utterly debunked. It didn't happen. And I think maybe
to me it's just that even if here's the real kicker is that even if every story that came out about October 7th was true, it still would not justify what Israel is doing.
No, I believed it. Initially, I believed it.
This gives people permission not to care. Like, well, that's
they
voted them in or whatever it is.
It doesn't justify murdering pregnant women, sniping pregnant women in the stomach, killing people in tents, leaving babies to rot in ICU chambers. Like, just none of it could possibly justify that.
Okay. Saxon Stacker's been making lots of comments, and normally I'd like to go through the comments, but we've been going for 3.5 hours. Laura's a trooper. And I also, I'm fading in and out because there was miscommunication in my household about who was going to cook. And so even though I have lots of extra storage calories, I haven't had anything to eat since like 11. So I'm feeling like, woo.
Yeah,
so I was like, it was just crazy. I went down to see if this is just her and I chatting now. I think it was like 6:30, whatever. I was like, oh, and I'm like, where's the food? Oh, I thought you were gonna cook. No, you're gonna cook. I'm like, oh my God. And like nothing is, I'm like, oh, it's all right. I didn't want to postpone it, but I'm just
Oh,
going to shut up now because I'm so loopy. I'm just going to keep on talking like I'm drunk. I'm not drunk. Not drunk yet. Laura, love you. Good to see you. Thank you so much. You are a wealth of information. Again, I'll put Laura's deets in the notes in the video description. But yeah, we'll come back, and yeah, there's no shortage of crazy of morbid symptoms. And every once in a while we can have a positive show, maybe. I don't know. That would be nice.
hey,
And maybe
yeah.
I don't know, like who knows? You could help me with tell me, see if I should go full gray or not. Anyway, anything you want to say before we bid each other adieu? Any tips or words of wisdom or
try to stay off Twitter as much as possible.
Yeah.
Sign my petition. Sign the change.org petition.
That's right. All right. Yeah, because this is crazy. The situation is really, there's people making money hand over fist, leaving people in these terrible situations. And it doesn't have to be this way. We can house them. You can give people who need, if people need housing, then we should build more housing, or Jesus, not have vacant housing or not be tearing down housing that could be used. But the market, we have to wait for the market to decide, which is, I guess, a pseudonym for, which is a synonym for Wheatley Group in Scotland. All right, give your family my best. I like the setup. I like the digs. I like the flag you got going on there. Very lovely. Take care, Laura. See you next time.
Yeah, take care. Thank you so much. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Bye. All right, so that was Laura Jones. Please do like, follow, subscribe. I'm on Rumble or X or YouTube. I'm also, I think it all goes well, I'm streaming on Substack, so I'm curious to see if that works out or not. Anyway, please do let me know what you think. If you have an idea for a show, for a guest or a topic, please do let me know. And if that's something I can manage, I will gladly add it to the roster. So on that note, I hope everybody has an enjoyable weekend, even though the craziness going on in the world. And don't forget to think about political economy whenever we're being encouraged or we're feeling ourselves foregrounding culture or race or any of that other stuff. Not that it isn't important, but always important to look at the structures that are driving these phenomena that are causing so many problems. All right. See you next time. Bye, everyone.